This Film is Lit, the podcast where we finally settle the score on one simple question. Is the book really better than the movie? I'm Brian. I have a film degree, so I watch the movie, but don't read the book.
And I'm Katie. I have an English degree, so I do things the right way and read the book before we watch the movie.
Look, some of us are lazy, alright?
If by lazy you mean wrong.
Prepare to be wowed by our expertise and charm as we dissect all of your favorite film adaptations and decide whether the silver screen or the written word did it better. So turn it up, settle in, and get ready for spoilers, because guess what? This film is lit. Harry delves into the past of the world's darkest wizard and navigates the complexities of teenage romance. It's Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, and this film is lit. Hello and welcome back to part 6 of This Film is Lit's Harry Potter series. We're on Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. We're done with breaks.
Yeah.
We're wrapping it up.
We're in the home stretch.
Home stretch. I've been loving it. Been really enjoying rereading them. But we're in the home stretch. We're doing Half-Blood Prince, Deathly Hallows Part 1, and then Deathly Hallows Part 2. And then Harry Potter is finito. So, as our Harry Potter episodes tend to go, they're different if you listen to our regular episodes. But a lot of people are here for the Harry Potter episodes. We don't have our Guess Who games or our recaps or the Let Me Sum Up, because we figure most people have either seen or read the books/movies, and if not, why are you here? But not that saying you can't be, but just, makes sense. You would either have read the book or seen the movie. Most people in the world have. I don't know if most people, but a lot of people in the world have. But we do have Muggle Questions that takes the place of Was That in the Book? A Lost in Adaptation, some of our normal series. And our good friend Trevor has been so kind as to volunteer his time and watch all the movies along with us. So he is the I haven't read the book person, because we both have, yes, obviously. So Harry is their stand-in for me in this particular instance. So we're going to start with our first segment, Muggle Questions.
Muggle.
Non-magic folk.
Brian, Katie, hello once again. Thank you for having me on This Film is Lit, Harry Potter edition. As always, I will start with my disclaimer. If I ask a question that is going to be answered later on, just tell me. I know we're getting toward the end, but it could still happen. Also, if I ask a question that's just really, really dumb, tell me that too. Let's get right into it. Why did Dumbledore purposefully transport Harry into a swamp? Seems like a really mean thing to do.
This isn't in the book.
Yeah, I don't know why the movie decided on that.
Well, because the setting of the burrow in the film is in like in the countryside, and they have like a marshy area.
Yeah,
kind of like, or like a pond or something near the burrow, and Harry sort of, I guess, apparates into this marsh or whatever. Because in the book, Harry and Dumbledore both show up to the burrow, and Dumbledore drops him off, and they talk for a minute. Like, it's not at all like it is in the movie. So they just, I guess, just for kind of silly sake, I don't know.
Silliness, or are they just setting up that the swampy pond area is there?
Introducing it for later in the movie. That's a part of it too, for sure. Introducing that there is this kind of marshy. Again, it's not really a swamp necessarily, whatever, like a marshy area near the burrow, because we see it again later. So, that's not in the book at all.
Why is Hermione always hanging out at the Weasleys? Why do we never see her at her parents' place?
We never see her at home in the books either.
No, very little mention of her parents, but we do occasionally get mentioned. We know and it gets mentioned again in this movie that they're dentists. But yeah, we don't ever see her house or anything.
I mean, my thought is maybe Hermione doesn't want to subject her parents to hosting underage wizard boys.
Yes.
Because I wouldn't.
Fair.
Do that.
That's fair.
Do they ever explain what Dumbledore was doing to fight Voldemort, like the first go-around? Like, he rose to power, then what? And if he was doing something, why didn't it work?
He does a lot of the same stuff the first go-around. That's when the Order of the Phoenix was first created, was to fight Voldemort the first time around. We get a little more backstory of it in the books, where we see the picture in the movie of Mad Eye,
of the old order.
The old order with the long bottoms and Mad Eye and Lupin, all the people that we know, and then some more. And so they had this group the Order of Phoenix, and they were battling and doing what they could to stop Voldemort. They had no real answer. They were just doing, they had no chosen one at the time,
right?
Because which we'll get into later. But they were just kind of winging it and doing what they could to battle the Death Eaters. All right, that's it for the first segment of Muggle Questions. We're gonna get into the longest segment in these episodes, which is because as we are both book readers and book lovers of this particular series, better in the book.
You like to read?
Oh, yes. I love to read.
What do you like to read?
Everything.
So we have a lot, not quite as much as some of the 4 and 5, which got really lengthy. But this one's there's a lot here. But
I thought this one was, in my opinion, a better adaptation than I felt like 4 and 5 were.
I agree. There's some standout issues with this one, but it's not the same sort of mess. Not that the other ones are necessarily a complete mess, but there's a lot of messy ends that 4 and 5 don't really.
After watching 6, I didn't feel the same way after I did after 4 and 5, where I felt like I couldn't imagine following that, having not read the book. I didn't feel that way after 6.
No, I feel like you could mostly follow it. Now, we'll see. That I think that changes a bit with the 7, part 1 and part 2. From my memory of watching these movies years ago with Trevor and him going, I didn't understand anything that just happened. So I will say that I have a feeling 7 is going to be similar, where if you didn't read the books, you'd be really confused at what was going on. I think there's a bit of that in this, but overall, and I think the thing this one does really well that we mentioned, this movie does really well, is it gets a lot of the characterizations pretty good in terms of where the characters, how they grow over the course of the book / this movie. And their character interactions work really well, and they do grow in the way that we need them to over the course of the movie, the way they do in the book, or the way we need them. The way they do in the book, they do a similar job, even though they change some plot elements in the movie. But we're going to talk about all the things they do change and what we would have preferred they hadn't in this segment. So first up, the beginning of the book, we get a chapter, and we talked about this in the prequel episode, that this was something J.K. Rowling had been wanting to do in all of the books and finally did it, where the Minister of Magic meets the human Prime Minister, and they discuss the magical world.
Yeah.
In this particular instance, it's Fudge and then eventually Scrimgeour, which is how I'm going to pronounce that.
In this movie.
Who's not in this movie.
And
he was supposed to be.
He was going to be.
He was supposed to be. He got cut. I think I read something somewhere that he was written in, but ultimately it just didn't work out and they cut him from it. But he was cast.
We finished watching it and I was like, we'll never know how to pronounce his name now.
Yeah, he is in 7.
Say it.
He is in 7. He's played by Bill Nighy, but and he was cast for this one, but it ultimately through cuts just got whittled out, and he ended up not being in the film. But there's this opening scene in the book which is kind of cool. And it's kind of interesting, where you set up sort of the Minister of Magic explaining everything that's going on to the Muggle Minister. Yeah,
it kind of sets up how those two factions interact with each other.
Yeah, the Minister of Magic comes out of the fireplace, and we kind of get a glimpse into the Muggle Prime Minister, and sort of how he doesn't exactly love being like, it's very much feels like he feels like the little brother in the situation of like, they're, these wizards show up and they're like, don't worry, we're taking all this crazy shit is happening, but you don't bother, you just keep putting out warnings about people not to, stay out at night or whatever. Like basic, like kind of like try to be safe, but like we're taking care of the actual problem. You can't really do anything about this, you muggle. Like, and so he's not a big fan of the Ministry of Magic, but it's a fun scene. I wish they had somehow found a way to work it into the book. I think they could have done both. They kind of cut it out completely. They do show us what some of the things that they talk about in this scene.
Yes.
Which is we'll talk about later. I think was a good choice.
We don't get that actual scene. I would have liked to see at least a minute or two of it.
I think it would have been fun.
But we're missing that, and we're missing what I interpreted from the book as some pretty obvious shade on George W. Bush from J.K. Rowling.
Yes, which, is not surprising.
She mentions, she has the British Prime Minister mention at one point, the wretched president from a distant country.
Yes. Which we can all guess as to who that may be referring to. This came out in 2007, I believe. So
2005.
Oh, 2005.
For the book.
The book,
yeah.
yes, sorry, 2005. that particular person that may have been referring to. They also cut, and this is a really fun scene in the book. Again, the Dursleys are not in the movie.
Yeah.
Again,
not at all.
Tend to not be. I think they are in 7.1, maybe. I can't remember.
I think,
because that's like their last scene or whatever. But there's a scene where Dumbledore comes to pick up Harry from the Dursleys in the book. In the movie, they switch it. He picks him up from a train station. In the book, there's some really great interactions. There's a couple really great lines. There's some really good Dumbledore lines in this book in general that they cut from the movie, which is kind of disappointing. But when he comes in and he's talking to the Dursleys, Mr. Dursley says, "I don't mean to be rude," and Dumbledore responds, "Yet sadly, accidental rudeness occurs alarmingly often."
It's just, he has so many really great, like, passive-aggressive lines in this scene, like, when he first gets there, too. He's standing in the doorway and he says, "Let us assume you have warmly invited me into your home."
He's a lot sassier in the books than he is in the movies. It seems he's kind of just he tends to be kind of serious. One of my biggest problems with the movies in general is the characterization of Dumbledore. We've talked about it before a lot at length in the older episodes about the problems they have with portraying him. They don't get what Dumbledore's about. They kind of, especially with Michael Gambon, Dumbledore, he's kind of always very grave, generally. Not always. He has moments of levity and like moments, but it's not enough, and he's not as quirky as he should be in the movies.
The movies really never quite managed to nail Dumbledore.
No. He has a good moment, like at the end of Prisoner of Azkaban, that moment where he's shutting the door and he's talking to him and he says something, they come back in and they're like,
they're like, "We did it," and he says, "Did what?"
And
he's
and
that's Dumbledore.
It's the most Dumbledore moment of that, like we probably get out of Michael Gambon, and he has a couple moments in this one, but it was one of their biggest problems. And they cut a lot of his really good lines in this one, where you see the more playful side, playful during intensely like dire situations. He still manages to kind of ride that line. Also, we get a great moment where he pours them drinks, and then hands them out, and they don't drink them, and so he magics them to just bang against their heads while they're sitting there.
They just float in the air and like tap on their foreheads the whole time they're sitting there.
And I just really wanted to see that. Like the Dursleys sitting there in drink glasses, just like rubbing across their faces while Dumbledore's talking to them. Would have been really funny to see, but we don't get the Dursleys at all. So there's another really great line. This is again Dumbledore not getting his due in the films. They're leaving the Dursleys, and Harry says something about are you worried? Dumbledore says, "I don't think you need to be worried about being attacked tonight, Harry." And Harry goes, "Why not?" And Dumbledore says, "You're with me." And the description is, "You're with me," he said simply. And it's like such a badass line. And again, you just don't get, it doesn't come through in the movies.
Well, and then they replaced that with Dumbledore like very sharply saying, "Do as I say," to Harry. And it's so un-Dumbledore, it hurts my soul.
Yes, it is. "Do as I say." He says, "Come with me, do as I say." And it's like, it doesn't. There are moments, I think what they're trying to set up is later in the film where Dumbledore, and in the book, where Dumbledore is very explicitly like, "Harry, you have to do exactly what I tell you. You can't, like, if I tell you to leave me, you have to leave me. If you tell, they're trying to go for that. But he says it so severely, and so like, he's like, "Do as I say." It's like,
well, and the
and
part
he doesn't
that
need
happens
to do that.
later, that's something that he sets up with Harry in advance that they agree to, and that's much more Dumbledore than just barking orders
at people. Again, especially at Harry, especially because there's no need to, because Harry absolutely has no reason not to just come with him and do what he said. Like, it's so strange. I was like, no, come on. So then they show up at Slughorn's to recruit him, and Harry doesn't know why he's there necessarily, but they go to recruit him, and I think they don't make a good enough job, do a good enough job in the movie, because I think it's a very important element to the story that I got in the book, is that they don't stress enough how there's a lot of conversation in the book during the scene where we're first introduced to Slughorn about he's very into being comfortable. Like, he has all of his creature comforts, even when he's in a home that's, he breaks into this Muggle home to stay there.
He's on the run.
He's on the run
basically.
from the Death Eaters, essentially. But even on the run, he has to have his crystallized pineapple and his matured meads and his, all of these comfortable things. And that's really ultimately why he doesn't get involved or doesn't want to get involved, is because he doesn't want to ruin his comfort. And I think that's a very important message in general, just sort of, especially now, about just in general about how comfort can be the enemy of progress. If it's easy for people when they are comfortable to not want to do anything to affect any change, because why? I'm fine. I got all my comfort. I'm
comfortable.
Great.
So why should I get up off my butt to help you guys?
Well, because Death Eaters are killing tons of people and Voldemort, it's taking over the world, and it's only a matter of time before your comforts are no longer so comfortable once that all goes down. They kind of allude to it a little bit throughout the movie, but I don't think nearly enough. And I think it's a really important message.
You're right. It doesn't come through in the movie. Yeah. I think that in that scene, they got a lot of like the aesthetic stuff right.
Yes. The aesthetics are great in that scene.
Later,
yes.
But not so much like the message.
The message
of that scene.
And of spurring an old, comfortable white man into action.
But also, he doesn't have a mustache.
Yes, in the book he has a mustache, and in the movie he does not. He doesn't look anything like the description in the book. In the movie, he's supposed to be very overweight, very big and wide in the book as part of his description. In the movie, he's a little overweight in the movie, but he's not. The description in the book is like he's as wide as he is tall, but like he's this big rotund man, with a mustache.
He's been sitting around eating
pineapple, and drinking
mead.
Yes, exactly. And he doesn't quite come across that way in the movie, but I think he still looks fine. But the mustache, he doesn't have the mustache.
Yeah, it's just like a big walrus mustache, which would have been great.
Yeah, this is a little thing, but it really annoys me that they don't turn on the spot when they apparate.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
I think in general the apparition
looks cool. Yeah, I think it looks
good.
great. It's just they should turn and then it should do that. Like, because in the movie, it does the thing where like they apparate and they wrinkle up and like suck into a little, like it looks cool and it's perfect. I have no problem with the actual visualization of apparating. It's a little thing. It's so simple. Just turn, like how it's described in the book. In case you aren't aware, like in the book, what you do is you visualize where you want to go, and then you turn on the spot, and then in that act of turning, that somehow starts the process, and then you teleport basically. But in the movie, they just do it, it's fine. It's not a big thing. It's just a little thing. It's like why not have that?
Right. It's one of those things where why would you not?
The only thing I think is that it makes it easier to animate. If they're not
possibly
spinning when that happens. Maybe that's literally the only thing. I don't know how much harder that would be.
The special effect.
That would be my only guess, but... Oh, and then, so the other thing about when they get to the burrow that really annoyed me is since Dumbledore just drops him off, as we mentioned in Trevor's first question, literally just drops him in a marsh, and Harry finds his way up. In the book, there's a really good scene where Dumbledore pulls him into a shed when they get there, and they have a discussion. And I think this was a big mistake, cutting the scene. They didn't even need to do it there. They just needed to do it at some point early in the movie, because it really establishes the relationship between Harry and Dumbledore and makes us understand why Harry cares for him so much, and sort of stresses how much they care for each other, because they're talking about Sirius and losing Sirius, and Dumbledore's comforting him and basically saying, it's like those that we lose are not, he kind of like platitudes, but like in a very fatherly way.
Yeah, it shows Dumbledore as more of a father figure than maybe we've seen him be. Especially
in these movies where he's like grabbing Harry and shaking and yelling at him and stuff. It would have been nice to have a scene where we see why you see the closeness between them and see why Harry cares for him so much, even though we haven't seen that much of it in the movies to this point. I think it was really a mistake to not have that in there.
Another character that got totally cut from this movie is Fleur Delacour.
Yes.
Who you might remember from book 4.
Goblet of Fire, yes. She is the Beauxbatons champion.
She's back in this book because she is engaged to Bill Weasley. So she's staying at the Burrow.
Yes.
And holy good lord.
She's the worst.
She is obnoxious.
She's straight up the worst.
And the worst of it is the scene at Christmas.
Yes.
In my opinion, when she's just being like a little shit.
Just absolutely terrible.
Awful. But the movie drops all of that. They drop her entirely, and all of that animosity, so there's no setup for Bill and Fleur's relationship,
the wedding
or their
or
wedding.
anything. It just happens.
I remember
it is in the book.
Yeah,
it's absolutely, because that's where they get attacked and then they run, and it's absolutely in the movie. But there's no setup for it in the previous movies,
right?
Which is a little strange, unless they're because Bill's not in book 4, because that's where they first meet. Is he shows up with Mrs. Weasley at for the last,
like make eyes at each other across the room.
Before the last task of the Triwizard Tournament, and so that's kind of where they meet, and then they come back. But there's no setup for it. They're just getting married in the beginning of the 7th movie. It's like, why is she with him? What? All right, maybe there's a line probably that they one line it away in the 7th movie. But she's at Christmas. She's really hating on whatever the performer they're listening to, like Mrs. Weasley's favorite. Singer,
her favorite old singer
who does like a Christmas album, and she's just like literally in a it's like, read the room, lady. Like she's sitting around in a room with all the rest of the Weasleys, and the song gets over and she's like, is it over? Thank goodness. What an horrible. And it's like, and everybody's like, well, should we have a nightcap? Let's go to bed. And she's just truly the worst. But we get a lot of progress with her throughout. She shows up several times. She has a
nice moment at the end that gets cut as well.
Yes, because Bill is also not in the movie. I really love this as a little thing, and we get a little bit of it in the 5th movie with Arthur. We don't get enough of Arthur, I don't think, in these movies. But we find out that his dearest ambition is to find out how planes stay up. There's a thing where they're setting up, like, they have like code questions to like make sure that they aren't imposters, basically,
right, or that they aren't like under control or something.
And so like when somebody will ask, like Mrs. Weasley will ask Mr. Weasley when he gets home, what's your dearest ambition? And he'll say to learn how planes stay up. And that's how they know it's actually Arthur Weasley. And I was like, wizards could really use physics classes, because that is not that complicated of a question. But sure, okay. It's pressure differences. That's all it is, bud. And we cut to, we're established, we do the setup for the unbreakable vow. And there's a little scene, and overall, I really like that whole scene in the movie. I think they do it pretty well. But they have a little moment that they could show to kind of reestablish and constantly remind us that the Death Eaters, and especially some of them in particular, are like truly terrible people.
Yeah.
And there's a scene in the book where when they get to the town where Snape is living, Bellatrix and Narcissa, Bellatrix kills just a random fox.
Yeah, just
Avada Kedavra is a random fox. And she has a throwaway line about thinking it was like somebody like an animagi or something like that, but I don't know if we buy it. She was just killing a random animal she saw because she's fucking messed up. Like, that's what it is. And I was like, you could have had that in. Would have been, again, a good way to show us some of the evil things that they do.
And the movie moves that scene.
It does. It moves,
which I want to talk about later. But then I think
because that's like the 2nd chapter of the book.
Yes,
but it comes after a bunch of other stuff in the movie, which we'll talk about later.
But I think the next thing we do in the movie is go to Diagon Alley.
Yeah, they go to Diagon Alley to get supplies and stuff, and to go visit Fred and George's Weasley Wizarding Wheezes, which they have a shop in Diagon Alley now. And
in the book, they are wearing lime green dragon skin suits.
Yes.
And I needed that.
They really have an aversion to lime green, and because we don't get the lime green bowler hat of Fudge, and we don't get the lime green suits. I mean, it does look terrible on camera. Like, I'm sure it just would look awful, but yeah, it would be nice. They're just wearing it appears like they tried to go for some sort of like dragon skin looking suits. They're wearing like suit jackets that kind of look like leather or something. But but they're not lime green. They're just
brown.
They are just brown. It's very boring in comparison. And then while they're in the thing, they see the Malfoy and his mom go walk down the street, or Malfoy maybe by himself, I don't remember. Walking down the street, and they go follow him. And they run into Borgin and Burke. They see him in Borgin and Burke's talking about, and they do it very differently in the movie. That scene is very different. But in the book, they hear him talking about something and about wanting to get something fixed, and they're like, what? And they don't know what, and they can't tell what he's looking at. And so they try to figure out what he was.
Right. Hermione does some really great reconnaissance
great spy work here by Hermione in the book. That would have been really fun to see in the movie, where she goes in and pretends to be his friend and looking for a birthday present for him.
Yeah, she's like, I want to buy him something. What was he looking at?
Yeah.
And Morgan does not buy it
not
for
at all.
second.
It's like, get the fuck out. She tried. She did her best. She's like, what about this thing? Is anybody reserving this item? And she's like just pointing at random things around the room. And again, I think it would have been really funny to see Emma Watson do that.
It would have been a nice moment of levity.
Yeah, it would have been fun. But yeah, they do that that scene is completely different in the movie. So, all right, the biggest problem probably with, and everybody hates Ginny in the movies, and I think for good reason. I'm also not a fan of what they did with Jenny's character. And now I'm not sure personally if it is more to do with the actress or with the writing. I don't know if...
I'm more inclined to blame it on the script.
I am too, but I'm wondering if the reason the script is as poor as it is in regards to their relationship and what the way and Jenny's characterization is because they were worried about that actress's
like her
chops.
pulling it off. Yeah.
I don't know. I'm wondering because they completely write out all of Jenny's fire and like her attitude that makes her an interesting character in the books. And there's lots of it, especially throughout this book. She does a lot of things like when they're visiting the Weasleys. And this scene's in the movie. They're visiting the Weasley twins' shop and they're looking at love potions. And the twins say like, "You don't think you need love potions? From what we hear, Jenny, you got plenty of boyfriends or whatever." And in the movie, she kind of just goes, "That's none of your business," and walks away. Yeah. In the book, she like smacks him down. She's like, "It's none of your fucking business how many boys I date." Like she comes back at him in a way that's a lot more appealing and like you can see that she's strong, independent woman and she don't need nobody's fucking opinions about what she does with her life. And it just doesn't come across in the movie. They never have her have that moment of like
no,
fire.
Yeah,
she's so milquetoast in the movies.
She's a very pale, subdued,
yes,
boring version of Ginny in the book.
And so it makes it very hard to understand why Harry's interested in her.
Yeah.
But it makes a lot more sense in the book because they have a
repartee.
Yeah, between each other, like they like dump on Ron together. It's like whenever like she's the person Harry can go to when he's like fed up with Ron and like make fun of Ron with and that sort of thing. And so they just have a lot. Their back and forth makes a lot more sense in the movies, whereas them just awkwardly staring at each other, or it makes a lot more sense in the books, whereas them just awkwardly staring at each other in the movies is like,
and all of their scenes are just so cringy.
Yeah. It is very cringy, incredibly cringy, and we'll get to some of those here very shortly. But like, there's numerous times in the book where, like I said, where she smacks down the twins about who she dates. She confronts Ron about the same thing about like, how dare you tell me who I can date? She pulls her wand on him at one point, and it's like going to curse him for being a shithead. And it's like, we don't ever get to see any of that. And it's so annoying. Also, she defends Luna, which is really sweet. Somebody's like making fun of Luna. I think it's Slughorn's party or something. And she's like, shut the fuck up. Like, she like smacks somebody down for making fun of Luna. And I think that's another thing of like her standing up for people is the same kind of thing that Harry tends to do. And it makes more sense that they...
Yeah, that they have a kinship there.
And this, okay, so then we cut to, we finally run into, I think this is once they're on the train or maybe getting off the train. And he runs into Luna at one point, and there's this really awkward conversation. And I think it's kind of interesting where Harry's talking to Luna, and she says, "I enjoyed the DA meetings." Or he says, she's like, "Are we still going to do DA meetings?" And he's like, "Well, no, because Umbridge is gone, so probably not." And Luna says, "Well, I enjoyed the meetings. It was like having friends."
Yeah.
And I think she actually has that line in the movie, I think. Something like that line. I remember hearing that line.
Yeah, something similar.
But I love it's just Harry's, and he comments on it in the book, like the narrator, Harry, comments on it in the book a lot of times about how, like, she has this weird knack for saying, like, very truthful, but, like,
really uncomfortable
things to people. And I was wondering, and I assume it's probably the case that this is, that JK was trying to write a character that was potentially like on the spectrum somewhere, or I don't know, like is sort of like an interesting representation of that. Cause she definitely has a knack for saying things that makes everybody else very uncomfortable, but are not necessarily like wrong things. Like she just says what she feels in the moment, regardless of how she thinks other people are going to feel about what she says, which is kind of interesting. Then we run into Pansy well, I don't know. I want to talk about this. Is that Pansy Parkinson on the train, or is she just not in the movies?
To be.
Okay. because we run into Harry runs into Draco on the train when he's going to spy on him, and in the
parkours into the top, the luggage rack,
straight up parkours into the luggage rack. And in the book, Malfoy is described as like having his head laying in Pansy Parkinson's lap, and that's not what's happening in the movie. But there is a girl sitting across from him on the train next to Blaze, and I'm wondering if that's supposed to be Pansy Parkinson, because if so, because we've never seen her in any other movies, I don't think. And she's mentioned almost every book at least a few times. She's like the main Slytherin girl that we know. And I'm wondering if that's supposed to be her, because it's not remotely what I imagined her to look like. I don't know what I imagined her to look like, but her in this movie, if that is Pansy Parkinson, that's not remotely what I expected that person to look like.
Did not have any issues with the way Pansy Parkinson
looked. I don't know.
Looked.
I always just imagined her a little more like she was just too generic looking in the movie. If that was her, like I've always imagined her to be much more like and shrill, like her voice, like her name's Pansy Parkinson, like should have like a weird like annoying voice. I feel like maybe not. I don't know.
Girlier?
Yeah, like she's like more girly. If that's even makes sense. Then, and again, she's in one scene. She has one line in the movie. I don't even know if it's supposed to be her. It doesn't matter, but whatever.
So then we have a pretty big change. I have big.
Well, relatively big. After Draco breaks Harry's nose and leaves him on the train under the cloak. In the book, Tonks finds him. And we find out, and this is where they set up that R's are following Harry around. Like Tonks basically and other people from the Order are following Harry around to make sure he stays safe, essentially.
Yeah, make sure he doesn't get himself killed.
Right. Especially by Draco for being an idiot. And so Tonks finds him, and it kind of makes sense in the book because, again, she's supposed to be watching him and kind of protecting him, and she realizes that
he didn't get off the train.
He didn't get off the train, so she comes and finds him. In the movie, it's just randomly Luna's walking through the train after everybody leaves, and she has some magic specks on that let her see rack spurts or whatever.
Yeah, they show it the way the movie shows it. It looks like kind of like glitter in the air.
Yeah,
almost.
I think they're supposed to be like little fly type things, like magical flies or something like that. But so she sees them around Harry's body, like laying on the ground, and so even though he's in an invisibility cloak, she knows something's there, I guess.
Right.
But it's weird because how would she know there was somebody there? She casts Finite at it, which we've never heard Finite by itself in the books or the movies, but Finite Incantatem is how you like stop a spell. It's how you like if something's like if it's how like you I think it's how you if somebody's Petrificus Totalis, it's how you stop them from being petrified, right?
Yeah.
Am I crazy? I think that's right. And so that's what, and that happens with Harry. She hits him with it and he becomes unpetrified, but she didn't know he was there. So we're to assume she was shooting that spell at the rack spurts or whatever. I never understand why she did that spell where she did, and then that means she she discovers.
She can see, because she says that she knew there was somebody there because she could see the rack spurts.
Right.
So maybe she just cast it thinking, oh, this will reveal whoever. But she should have
casted like reveal. Isn't Revelio or something like a spell?
I don't know.
It felt like a weird spell choice. And a weird but it is Finite ends up working because Harry was petrified,
right?
So that it breaks it and he's able to get up. But why would she have cast that spell? Is my question. I don't understand why she cast that spell.
I think it doesn't work on a logical level, but it also kind of does work because it's Luna.
Right. I guess. Yeah, it's Luna. So sure. Yeah, we can just hand wave away weird writing because Luna's weird. So like, sure, why not? I don't know. I thought it was a weird change, and especially because Tonks is in the movie. It's not like they cut the character completely. She shows up later in the film, so she could have just been there and then be like, "I'm following you for the whatever." Like, I don't know. It just seemed like a weird change to me, and I wasn't really sure why they did it, other than to have more Luna in the movie, I guess. Whatever. Yeah. Then we get to classes. And this is a change. It's a great line in the books.
Oh my god.
It's such a good line in the books.
I can't believe the movies cut this.
And it's absolutely ridiculous.
It's an iconic line.
It is a truly iconic line. And they completely, because we don't ever get, and again, we were watching the theatrical version, we think. Whatever. It's the DVD cut. So this scene may exist in an extended cut or something. But where we get to Defense Against the Dark Arts now taught by Snape, and they're learning nonverbal spells, which the movie completely doesn't talk about, which is interesting. We'll get to later. But Snape says to him, they're in class, and Snape says to Harry, because Harry, they're practicing nonverbal spells. Harry just reactively blocks one of Snape's spells that they're doing for like a demonstration.
Yeah, he just has like a knee-jerk reaction.
And he just does Protego, but he says it out loud, and it ends up like knocking Snape across the room into the wall. And Snape says, do you remember me telling you we were practicing nonverbal spells, Potter? And Harry, yes, said Harry stiffly. Yes, sir. There's no need to call me sir, Professor. Which is a great line. It's a great moment. It's an iconic moment, and it's not in the movie. It's also weird that they just dropped the whole nonverbal thing, and it's weird that they set up, Snape's teaching Defense Against the Dark Arts, and then we never have a class with it.
Yeah, they never do anything with it.
We never do anything with it in the movie, which is really weird and doesn't really make any sense. But also, again, Snape is the worst teacher as described in the books. Literally, if you ignore every other terrible thing about Snape, which there are legion, he's truly a terrible teacher.
He's a bad teacher.
I'm only gonna
he doesn't teach
as described in the books. Now he may be better, there may be more that he does that is not like told to us by J.K. Rowling. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like as described in the books, literally, they start practicing nonverbal spells. His lesson is just don't say anything and do it. Basically is how he teaches them to do nonverbal spells. He's like, just don't say anything and then cast a spell with your mind, dum-dums. And they're like, how? And he's like, yeah, like that. And they're like, what? And I'm like, you're a terrible teacher. It's the same thing with Legilimens. When he's trying to teach Harry occlumency, it's like he's just concentrate and clear your mind. Is that all
it's terribly unhelpful.
Literally the only advice he gives these people, and it's so bad. It's such a bad teacher. Also, I love once we set up the whole what the Half-Blood Prince in the book. Harry gets the book in the potions book, and it's got all these addendums to the potions that makes him like the best potion maker in the whole world. And we don't know who the Half-Blood Prince is, but Harry's been following all these directions, and it's been working wonders for him so far. And I love there's a great little interaction in the book where they're all like, Hermione's like, really, like, you shouldn't be doing whatever this random spells and shit you're finding in this book is like a really dumb idea. And Jenny's like, hey, I think if anybody can tell you that it's not a good idea to follow instructions from random books that you don't know where those instructions are coming from, I think I'm the one who can tell you shouldn't do that. But yeah, she gets on him for taking unknown instructions from a book.
Right. More fire from Jenny that got cut for the movie.
Yes.
So the movie also never establishes that Harry is taking private lessons with Dumbledore.
He just shows up at Dumbledore's office.
He just shows up and they start talking about Voldemort memories. We don't have any kind of framework for why they're doing that
or what's going on. He's not like, Harry, I need your help with some special stuff this semester. He does have the line in the movie, you may be wondering why I summoned you here this evening. And I'm like, yeah, all of us are. We don't know what is going on right now. Okay, so this is kind of a big change in the movie. And I get it. Because, again, time. Mm-hmm. This movie's 2.5 hours long already. This book is shorter than the previous two books. Fairly significantly shorter. Yeah. It's 200 pages shorter than the fifth book.
Yeah.
And a little bit shorter than the fourth book. But this movie's 2.5 hours long. And so they obviously couldn't put everything from a 645-page book or whatever in there. But they cut all of the memories. They decided to just focus on the memories specifically relating to Tom Riddle as a kid.
Yeah.
And I will say that those are the most important memories that we get in the movie in general, are him at the orphanage when Dumbledore meets him, and then him talking to Slughorn. But those are like the only two we get. We don't get any of the other backstory for Tom Riddle.
Whereas in the book we see his mother's side of the family.
Yes.
We see a lot of them.
We see a lot. We have numerous memories of the Gaunts, which is Tom's mom's family. And I get why they're cut for time, but learning about Voldemort's family is kind of important, and it's kind of a big element of learning why Voldemort is the way he is and why he's doing the things he's doing. And we don't get that in the movie so much. We don't really ever learn why he's doing any of the stuff he's doing or why he turned out the way he did. He's just kind of like a weird kid that is in this orphanage, and you can tell he's a little bit off. But we don't get like any sort of setup, or because in the books we get a lot of information about, and Riddle finds out this information about the fact that his mom was a wizard, or that he thinks, and that his dad left his mom, and so he hates his name because he knows his dad was a Muggle and his dad abandoned his mom.
Yeah.
And so he hates Muggles for that kind of, he has these deep-seated daddy issues essentially where
Does he ever?
Yes. And because his dad was a Muggle, that sort of amplifies his hatred for Muggles and sort of makes and explains why he's so into the sort of purebloodism and like, and magic is the thing that makes him interesting and unique.
Yeah, magic makes him special.
Magic makes him special.
He likes being special.
He really likes being special. And I don't think the movie does a good enough job explaining why it is Voldemort is the way he is.
The movie does not at all do a good enough job with his backstory.
Yeah.
But we do see the scene in the orphanage.
Yes.
At least in part.
Yeah, most of it. But yeah, relatively speaking, most of it. We don't get as much of the dialogue as we get in the book. Mm-hmm. But we do get the scene in the orphanage where Dumbledore lights the wardrobe on fire and you hear the things rattling and Riddle gets him out. And I don't even remember in the movie if they explain that those are things he stole. I think they do. Right?
I think it's implied.
Or it's implied.
Dumbledore says, like, you have to return them to their owners.
He says,
like
right. So it's implied he stole this stuff. But so he has these items. This is really important to what we're learning about Voldemort, and they never do a good job of making this clear that this was important. I don't think, is that he collects things.
Yeah, he's a magpie.
Yes.
He collects trophies.
He collects trophies, and this is really super duper important, and the movie does not pay attention to this at all. It's very strange to me that they set that up with that scene, but then never paid off, because later, and we'll just jump to this now because it's relevant here, Dumbledore says, when they're discussing Horcruxes later, Harry goes, so they could just, a Horcrux could just be anything, and Dumbledore's, Dumbledore goes, in the movie, he goes, it could just be anything. And it's like, no.
Well, I mean, it could be,
sure.
But not for Voldemort.
Not for Voldemort, which is the whole point of why we're learning all this stuff about him, is trying to figure out what the Horcruxes are. At the end of this movie, it makes no sense that I'm interested to see how they do it in 7, how Harry would remotely come across finding the rest of these items, because in the book we set up at least one more of them. We know what one, like, well,
right, we set up the cup in the book, so we have the setup for the idea that he's looking for artifacts that belong to the Hogwarts founders. But what the movie also doesn't do, I don't think, is set up that the locket they're looking for belongs to Slytherin.
Yeah, I don't think so, because it's super important in the movie. It's Slytherin's locket. It's got.
So how on earth would Harry know where to keep looking for that? What to look for? I
mean, all he has to go on is the RAB thing.
Yeah.
That he gets in the locket at the end of the movie. But there's nothing set up about the locket. There's no information again about what kind of things. He literally, the movie does the opposite, and I couldn't believe it when he said that, where Dumbledore's like, it could just be anything. It's like, no. That's the whole point, is that it couldn't just be anything, and that's how you're able to actually figure out what they are and go find them.
Yeah, it's a mystery.
Yeah. If it's just
anything. But the movie makes it too much of a mystery.
Yeah, way too much of a mystery. It's very strange. Also, and so, because the book makes a very important point where Dumbledore's like, all right, let's recap what we just saw in that memory from the orphanage. 2 really important things. 1, Voldemort collects Voldemort collects trophies, collects items. Keep that in mind. That's important. He says that in the book to Harry and to us, the reader. And then he goes, also, he doesn't have friends. The book stresses so many times through Dumbledore, mainly through Dumbledore, how important it is, the idea that Voldemort does not have friends.
Yeah, he lacks and or does not feel that it is important to have connections with other people.
Yes. Yeah. And he makes it super clear in the book that it's important that he doesn't have friends.
Yeah.
Remember that, Harry. He doesn't have friends. And it also it's one of those things, and we've talked about it a lot over the course of these episodes, that the books catch a lot of the plot generally, even though they have holes there, but they do a pretty poor job at times of capturing some of the more important themes. And this is one of them, literally maybe the most important theme of this whole series, of the entire Harry Potter series. I mean, people can argue with me, but I argue that maybe one of the most important
probably
themes.
The single most thing that JK was trying to stress to us.
Love beats fear.
Yeah.
Love wins out over fear or power or whatever other thing. Love
because
conquers all.
Voldemort's downfall again and again is
Yes.
that he underestimates love and the affection that people feel for
other people. Yeah. And Voldemort does not feel that for people.
He doesn't feel that. He doesn't think it's important.
No.
He doesn't think it's powerful or relevant, and that is his downfall.
Every time when he dies the first time, or when he goes to kill Harry and dies, quote unquote, the first time, that is his downfall. And when ultimately they conquer him at the end of the 7th book, that is the reason. Is because he doesn't respect the how people feel about each other.
Yeah.
And he uses the people that are his followers. He uses them as tools, but none of them are his friends. None of them care about him. He doesn't care about them, and that's ultimately his downfall. And this movie doesn't make it clear that that's an important thing to remember about Voldemort, when that is a super important thing to remember about Voldemort. It was a little disappointing that they didn't.
Also, this is a small aesthetic thing, but in the orphanage memory, we see that young Dumbledore
Short hair and short beard, but yes.
In the movie,
yes,
short hair, short beard,
right.
But in the book,
yes, it's long.
It's long, but it's also bright ginger.
The ginge.
And
Dumbledore's
he's wearing like a flamboyant purple suit.
Yes.
And I'm like, please, could we not have?
Yeah. I'm hoping we get to see that now he doesn't, but we've already seen in Fantastic Beasts 2, he doesn't have ginger hair in that either, which is disappointing because that's the right time period. It's even before.
Yeah.
Because this is, it's probably about close to the same.
The Fantastic
Beasts probably takes place a little bit before. No, it definitely does. Not a little bit, a lot before.
It takes a little place before he goes to...
Because he goes to get Voldemort from the riddle from the thing probably in like the 50s or something like that. And this is like the 20s or 30s or whatever. So yeah, it's even before. So his hair should definitely be ginger.
It should be ginger.
It should be ginger. And it's not. It's,
dye your hair, Jude Law.
It's Jude Law colored hair. It's like vaguely blondish, I think. I don't even know. But yeah, I was like, come on, man. Oh yeah, the little random. We have a little random shot of a Death Eater trying to fly into Hogwarts in the movie.
It's so stupid looking.
It's basically it's like a callback almost to that scene where from like the 3rd one where a bird is flying and gets swatted by the Whomping Willow or whatever. Where it's literally it's a Death Eater in smoke form flying. Which we've discussed my issues with that, and then he just flies into like the invisible barrier
and just bounces off.
It's just a reminder for us, I guess.
Yeah, I guess it's a reminder that they can't just get in.
Yeah.
Which is why Malfoy is doing all the stuff with the Vanishing Cabinet and blah, blah, blah. But also, it doesn't make any sense that they would just be like randomly trying to get into Hogwarts because Voldemort is Voldemort and has a plan.
Has a plan for everything that's going on, yeah. And it's not one of you randomly
fly in. I don't know, man.
It's very strange. Again, I think it's just a reminder for the audience that, like, you can't just stroll in. That's why Malfoy's doing all this shit. Because the books make it clear numerous times, mainly through Hermione, you can't apparate inside or out. You can't apparate in or out of Hogwarts and blah, blah, blah. And we know all these protections and that they can't just show up there. But movie viewers probably don't have as much of they don't go on about that. It doesn't get reinforced as many times in the movies. So they needed a way to remind us.
So we have then a scene in Hogsmeade.
Yes. And this is where Katie Bell gets cursed.
Yeah. She comes into possession of a cursed necklace.
Yeah.
Which we've seen before.
Yeah.
In Borgin and Burke.
We have. And in the movie, we mentioned it. We have seen this in the second movie.
In Chamber of Secrets.
Yes.
And it's referenced again in this book when they see Malfoy go in there.
Yeah, it is. In the book, yeah.
But not in the movie. But the movie's transition into her getting cursed, I felt like was really confusing.
Yeah, we don't understand what's going on. It's just they walk to Hogsmeade. They have their scene at Hogsmeade with Slughorn.
Yeah.
And then they're walking back to Hogwarts, we assume. And there's just random talking of we hear like we're flying in and looking at Harry, Hermione, and Ron walking, and Hermione's like drunk or something. Like she's acting kind of drunk. It's weird. It's a very weird scene because she slammed her butterbeer in the previous scene, so she's like a little buzzed, I guess. But we hear like somebody talking to Katie. I imagine it's not
her friend was Leanne.
Yeah, Leanne's talking. Yeah, Leanne's talking to Katie, and we hear like "Don't touch it, Katie" or something. We're like, "What?" And then all of a sudden, Katie's just floating in the air. It's like, what just happened?
And there's a little bit more of setup in the book where we like kind of see them arguing over it, like and Leanne's trying to like get it from her.
Yeah.
And then the whole rising up into the air thing happens.
It's very strange. It's a little bit. There's a couple really interesting transitions and like scene jumps in the movie that are a little bit hard to follow if you don't know why we're there or what we're doing or what just happened or like if you reading the book, we know what's coming and what's going on and why this is happening, but it's a little confusing in the movie. I feel like it would be a little confusing. Then we jump to Slughorn's Christmas party, and this is a thing in the movie or in the book that I thought. So there's been a big falling out between Hermione and Ron.
Yes,
there's a big falling out because Ron is dating Lavender Brown.
Right.
And they're making out all over the place, and Hermione's not happy about it because she's crushing on Ron.
And there's a little bit more to it in the book where I think in the movie she mentions that she was going to ask him to the party.
Yeah.
But I think in the book, doesn't she actually like ask him? And
they do it in the movie too.
Ditches her?
They do it in the movie too, where she goes... Well, I think so, because there's a line where she goes, I was going to ask you. She basically asks him in the book, and he's like, oh, but she said they have that scene in the movie where she says something along the lines of, well, actually, I was thinking about taking you, and he's like, oh. And so it's like they're kind of like implied that they're going to go together.
Yeah.
But then after that, Ron ends up hooking up with Lavender, even though, because they didn't really have like concrete plans, but they kind of did. And so there's like this weird... like falling out because of that, and Hermione thinks Ron was going to go with her, and then so she gets super upset. But I love, so after Ron hooks up with Lavender, there's this great moment in the book where they're at breakfast like the next day, like before the Christmas party, the Slughorn Christmas party, and Parvati just randomly yells down the table to Hermione, and she's like, Hermione, so who are you taking to Slughorn's party? And Hermione like calls back, from the other end of the table, oh, I'm taking Cormac McLaggen. And Ron is just sitting there hearing all this, and they're like, they have this really like, and Harry's we're watching this through Harry's eyes of him like being like, what the fuck is going on? He's like, why are they being so weird? And then he realizes over the course of it that they're doing this, that she's doing
it on purpose because Ron does not like McLaggen,
who also applied or tried out for the Quidditch team.
Yeah.
And Hermione helped make sure Ron got the spot over McLaggen. And so Ron doesn't like McLaggen. And so he's a little bit jealous, but and so that's why she ends up taking McLaggen because she thinks it'll piss Ron off the most.
And it does.
And then in the movie they make a reference to that where she's at the party and Harry's like, "Why did you bring McLaggen?" She's like, "I thought it would piss Ron off or whatever." But in the movie or in the book, we actually see her doing that to annoy Ron,
actively trying to piss off Ron, which is great.
Yeah, it's really fun, and I thought that movie would have been fun, or that scene would have been fun to see. Oh, and then before they go to the party, so Harry decides to take Luna, which happens in the movie. And before that, the class before the party, they were transfiguring themselves in the book. Which again, the only class we ever get is potions in the movie because it's kind of the most important with Slughorn. I get it, but they're learning to transfigure themselves to like disguise themselves or whatever. And Harry's doing it, and he ends up accidentally turning half of one of his eyebrows like blonde or something or red or whatever.
Like highlighter yellow is how I pictured it. Yeah.
And they're going to the party, and Luna sees him and goes, when he asks her to the party, she goes, "Yeah, sure, I'll go." And she says, she asked if Harry dyed his eyebrow for the party and if she should do it too. And it's just one of those moments of Luna just being such a delightful oddball. It's just like, and I guess she has a little bit of she's good in this movie, and I wish she was in it. I wish she was in the book more, honestly, than she is, because she's always fun when she is in it. And they use her a little bit more in the movie than they do in the book. But yeah, that was a great line, and she doesn't get it in the movie, which is disappointing.
So we do get some of Slughorn's Christmas party, but we're missing a couple of things from it. one of the things is that there's a vampire there.
And his keeper, who's like a guy writing about him, his life or something. It's very strange.
Who also offers to do a biography for Harry.
Of Harry, yeah.
But anyway, my favorite thing is that the vampire is another example of really on-the-nose naming from J.K. Rowling.
Yeah.
Which is a thing that I see a lot of people complain about, but I love it because I think it's hilarious.
It's fantastic, yes.
She names the vampire Sanguini.
Yes.
You named your vampire Bloody.
Yeah.
JK, you literally named him Blood.
Yeah. Sanguini. Yeah. Perfect.
I love it.
It's
so adorable.
She probably had a placeholder and she's like, nah, fuck it. Like, I'm just going with
she
Bloody.
does that all over the place.
That's true. Yeah, she does do that all the time.
Like Sirius Black, the black dog.
Yeah, and all the authors of all the books all have like super on the nose like names about like Emmerich Switch is the Transfiguration book author or whatever. And so yeah, they all have like very on the nose names. So she does that a lot.
Yeah.
But I think it works because it's kids books like that.
No, I agree.
Yeah, it's great. Also, I love that. So when they're introduced to that vampire, Luna has a great line where she's like, Harry says, "Did you hear?" He's talking to Luna. He goes, "Did you hear there's supposed to be a vampire coming?" And Luna responds, "Rufus Scrimegour?" and I love Harry's response. He goes, "What?" You mean the Minister of Magic? Yes, he's a vampire, said Luna matter-of-factly. Father wrote a very long article about it when Scrimegour took over for Cornelius Fudge. I just love I love Harry's reaction to that. He's like, what? Scrimegour is a vampire?
That's super like Wizarding World National Enquirer.
Yeah, it is. And I love Luna. She would also drive me insane because I can't stand that sort of weird conspiracy nonsense. But like she's like the only conspiracy theorist I could ever like, I think, would be Luna Lovegood. It's
very endearing.
It's an endearing conspiracy theorist. Yeah.
A couple things from Christmas that were not done to my liking. Ron gets the necklace from Lavender Brown as a present.
Which we see her give him a necklace in the movie.
Yeah, we see it for like
it's from far away and we don't see what it is.
Yeah, but in the book, it's like this huge gold chain with big gold letters that spells sweetheart.
Yes. I think it's my sweetheart.
It's amazing.
Yeah. It's pretty fantastic. It's super gaudy and awful. And in the movie, it looks kind of vaguely just like a heart or something.
It's like majorly underplayed in the movie.
But they do go at least they give a little bit of it. But yeah, it's not nearly as fun.
And then they cut. Miss out on in the book. Harry has an entire conversation with Scrimegour.
Yeah.
Where he basically tries to get Harry to come on as like the minister's poster boy.
He wants him to be the poster boy, and Harry's like, nah.
Yeah.
Fuck you. And I love his big like slam down mic drop moment is he shows him the I must not tell lies scar that he apparently still has on his hand, which is pretty badass, which would have been a fun detail for them to keep in the movies, but I absolutely didn't do because it would be also be a nightmare to keep like every scene where we see Harry's the back of his left hand or whatever that says I must not tell lies on it. But then this is just some bad moments in the Burrow. This is the Jenny and Ron and Harry nightmare scenes, 2 of them, like back to back.
Yeah, like right in a row. Like, what are you doing to us, movie?
Jenny comes in and sits down on the couch next to Harry and has a plate of cookies, and she grabs one and turns to Harry and says, "Open up, you." And then awkwardly feeds Harry a cookie. And again, I think they're going for like cute, awkward, but like intentionally like. Yes, it's awkward and cringy, but that's the point because they're like dumb teenagers, like who are awkward and cringy. But it just comes across awful. Like it's just
there's no cute to it.
There's not any. It's just like, this is so bad. Oh no, oh god, this is the worst. And again, all of their scenes are like this, and we don't ever get any of the things that we don't ever see why they're compatible with each other, other than she's around Harry a lot and is not Hermione. Because that's the only reason we get...
I mean, that's apparently all you need.
That's the only reason we get in the movie is that she's the other girl around that's not Hermione. Like, okay, sure, fine. Also, they both play Quidditch, which we see in the movie, but we don't get much of it. Like, we see that she's at least on the Quidditch team in the movie, but in the book, they're Quidditch together. They play Quidditch. They play Quidditch at the Weasleys
they
together.
Really bond.
Yeah, they bond playing Quidditch together. And again, her fiery attitude that we just never get any of in the movies, which is it's the worst. And then, oh God, the shoelace scene. It's famously bad. Everybody makes fun of this and talks about the shoelace scene. I mean, it is truly terrible.
It is truly terrible. If at any point in our courtship you had ever just bent down to tie my shoe, I would have been like, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah. And she's in a bathrobe.
Yeah.
It's very awkward.
So weird.
It's so weird. And Harry just stands there awkwardly. And again, I think they're going for like, the awkward we all remember how awkward it was to be a teenager and, in love or whatever. It's like, yeah.
Yeah, but it wasn't that awkward.
It wasn't that awkward. Like, it wasn't that bad. Like, holy Jesus. It's so bad. And then the burrow burns down.
Yeah, okay. So burning the burrow.
Yeah.
All right. So I get it from a symbolic, thematic standpoint. The burrow is a place where Harry has always felt welcome and at home. A place where he feels that way that isn't Hogwarts.
Yeah.
So the burrow kind of represents normalcy.
Yeah.
To him, which makes taking that away like a loss of innocence.
Right. For sure. And it raises the stakes a lot for us too.
So I get it.
Yeah.
But I don't have to like it.
Yeah. I have this in a different segment. I have mixed feelings about this scene. I have this in a different segment because I do actually like a lot about this. I think it works, especially in the movie. I don't know if it would necessarily work as well in the books, but I think it works pretty well in the movie. But that being said, it's a big change. It's a big thing. It's kind of an iconic thing to do, and like a big decision to make, to be like, we're gonna burn down the burrow.
Yeah.
But I get it.
I had forgotten that was in this movie. I thought it was in one of the last two.
Yeah. We drop a lot of the sort of mystery of what Malfoy's doing. They do it differently in the movie, which I have in a different segment. I actually kind of like how they do it in the movie.
Right.
But one of the things they do in the book is that Harry never knows where Malfoy is going. He just disappears, which is also a thing that I thought was a little unbelievable, how long it takes Harry to figure out he's in the room requirement. I'm like, bud, if he's not on the map, and especially because he sees Malfoy and Crabbe and Goyle standing in hallways for long periods of time, not moving. And he's like, they're just standing there, but I don't know what they're doing. I don't see Malfoy anywhere. I'm like, well, maybe look at what hallway they're in. You know where the room of requirement is. Like,
now the movie, it shows us Malfoy doing stuff with the vanishing cabinet, but it kind of completely drops the plot line where Harry's so obsessively trying to figure out what he's doing.
Which is interesting, because that's kind of an important thing, is Harry constantly, we talked about it in the prequel a little bit, of Harry constantly being like, no, Malfoy's fucking Death Eater and he's doing something. He's got a plan.
Yeah.
And it's also because they downplay the battle at the end, because and I read about why they did that. They kind of completely downplayed. They just wanted to focus on Dumbledore dying and sort of downplay the little mini battle that breaks out at Hogwarts at the end of the 6th book. In the movie, they just sort of leave.
Yeah.
But it also doesn't really make a lot of sense in that regard why they would bring all the people in.
Yeah. Why are they there?
Now, to be fair, I always thought that was a little weird in the movie. Like, what is their goal? Or in the book, like, what is their goal? So Malfoy figures out this way to bring all the people in.
Right.
He's there to kill Dumbledore. That's their only goal, is to kill Dumbledore.
Yeah, as far as we know, that's the only thing that Voldemort
So why do they need all these people there?
And we know that it has to be Draco.
Yeah.
As per Voldemort's orders,
Yeah.
even though it ends up not being.
Right, but supposedly it was supposed to be Draco. But so if it had to be Draco, then why have all the other people? It was a little confusing to me at what the plan of why even bring all the other Death Eaters in. I never really understood even in the book, I never really understood the purpose of that. If you know why they did that, the only thing I can think is that they needed them there to create like a diversion basically, so that Malfoy could get Dumbledore alone somehow, kind of, maybe. Or I don't know. It was because they knew Aurors were there. Maybe that's it. Is that they knew there were Aurors there. There was defense there, and so if Malfoy just tried to confront Dumbledore, like the Aurors would just bust in and like stop him.
Right.
Maybe that's the idea, is that they needed somebody there to like cause a diversion so that Malfoy could do that. I don't know. I thought it was a little strange, but yeah. But in the book, anyways, to get back to my original point, Crabbe and Goyle are polyjuice potioning into girls a lot, which is fun.
Yeah, it's
like little girls, like first year girls apparently at points, because Harry like sneaks up on one of them at one time. It's a little awkward and weird. He goes like, "My, aren't you pretty?" to like a first year girl, and she like freaks out and runs away. And now it is Crabbe or Goyle or whatever, but it's still
a little weird.
Yeah, it's a little weird. We do get the triumphant return of Quidditch, which we'll talk about later, but they cut my favorite part of Quidditch from the books.
Yes,
is that Luna becomes the commentator because Lee Jordan has not since graduated. And we get a couple different announcers, but one of the games eventually we get Luna as...
And she does just about as good of a job as I would do.
As you would imagine Luna would do, commentating on Quidditch, which is not good at all because she has no idea what she's talking about. And I love the idea that they... But here's just some choice. If you have only ever seen the movie and haven't read the book, here are some choice quotes from Luna doing Quidditch commentary. "And that's Smith of Hufflepuff with the quaffle. He did the commentary last time, of course, and Ginny Weasley flew into him. I think probably on purpose. It looked like it. Smith was being quite rude about Gryffindor. I expect he regrets that now that he's playing them. Oh, look, he's lost the quaffle. Ginny took it from him. I do like her. She's very nice." But now that big Hufflepuff player's got the quaffle from her, I can't remember his name. Something like Buggins. It's Codwaddler, said Professor McGonagall loudly from behind Luna. The crowd laughed. I love...
Yeah, I like then at one point they mention that she keeps talking about like interesting clouds and stuff instead of the match.
Yeah, and she kept attempting to draw the crowd's attention to such things as interestingly shaped clouds and the possibility that Zachariah Smith, who had so far failed to maintain possession of the quaffle for longer than a minute, was suffering from something called loser's lurgy. Also, I love... "And Harry Potter's now having an argument with his keeper," said Luna serenely. "I don't think that'll help him find the snitch, but maybe it's a clever ruse." It's so great. I really wish they would have had some of that in the movie. I don't know when they would have put it in, but it would have been delightful. We don't get any apparition lessons.
Yeah.
In the movie, which is weird.
The sixth years are doing apparition lessons, which they kind of set up like it's a driving.
I saw it as very much
cool.
like a parallel to getting your driver's license, essentially, where they can do it when they're 16 or when they turn 17, I guess, or 16. Yeah, whatever. But they have to take a test and they have to kind of practice for it. So they get lessons every Saturday for like a couple months from this apparition teacher who kind of teaches them how to do it, or apparition, not apparition.
Yeah.
Apparition. Apparition is a different thing. It's a ghost or whatever. But anyway, so they learn how to do it. I just thought it was kind of fun. And we also set up that's also important for the seventh one, because they need to apparate everywhere. Yes. And so we need to know they learned how to do it, which we don't see in the movie.
And Ron actually gets to try for his license because his birthday's in
He's
the
older
spring.
than everybody else, yeah.
But they don't mention his birthday.
Yeah, they don't mention his birthday at all. So he just ends up randomly eating the love potion.
Yeah, it makes a little more sense in the book. He eats the love potion candies because he mistakes them for a birthday present.
Yeah.
As opposed to just having him like randomly help himself to the candy that's on Harry's bed. Which is what happens in the movie.
Yeah. There's a random... Okay, so again, they completely cut Dobby from the movie. Again. And
I think David Yates just doesn't like Dobby.
I think that must be the case. And I do think it's also probably not super cheap to animate for having him in the film. But... Again, so this has confirmed what we were asking or wondering earlier before, which is we see Dobby in episode number 2, or in Chamber of Secrets. Mm-hmm. We do not see him again in the films until his in death,
until his untimely undoing. Yes,
but so again, we have no. Most of the people, I would imagine, when we get to that point, don't even barely remember who the freak Dobby is if you haven't read the books.
I guess we'll see if Trevor has any questions.
Yeah, if he's like, what? Okay, so Dobby,
again,
from the earlier one, do I care about him? Like, because we constantly have the relationship between Harry and Dobby, and it's kind of a pivotal thing. And they constantly remind us, she constantly reminds us over the course of the books about how much Dobby cares for Harry and how Harry kind of, cares about Dobby and, as the person who set him free, basically. And Dobby helped him a lot. It has helped him throughout the course of the books in different ways, like in 4 and doing different things. But anyway, so there's the new house elf creature from the 5th one shows up again in this book because he now belongs to Harry. Yeah.
So, I mean, and that's another thing that we lose in the movie too, is that reminder of who Creature is and the fact that he has passed into Harry's ownership.
Yes.
2 things which are, again, important in book 7.
In book 7. We don't get any reminders on any of that stuff, which is, again, weird. But so Harry wants Creature to follow Malfoy.
Yeah.
Because he's trying to figure out what Malfoy's up to. And he's like, I know, I can use Creature. He'll follow him. He can report back on him. And when he summons him, Dobby is there with them. And they're fighting, and they get into a fist fight. And it's described in the book that Dobby knocks out a bunch of Creature's teeth. Like, he punches him in the face and knocks out, like, 4 of his teeth.
Oh, God.
And I would have paid good money to see a Creature versus Dobby fist fight. Would have been awesome. But yeah, and then Dobby and Creature both are going to follow Malfoy for him. Yeah. But again, like we said earlier, they kind of cut Harry being obsessed with figuring out what Malfoy's up to. He doesn't really realize. He just knows he's up to something from the first scene in the movie, but then never really follows up on it. There's zero setup for a Bazoar.
Yeah, for Harry knowing what that is and how to use it and what it's for. And
we get no setup for that at all in the movie. And in the book, we get set up for it because it's also in the first movie. Mm-hmm. In Snape's opening monologue, where he asks all the questions, and then we find out one of the things he asks, and what is a Bazoar? And he explains that it's a stone found in the goat of stomach, or stomach of a goat. The goat of a stomach. The stomach of a goat that is an antidote to most poisons or whatever. Yeah. So if you remember movie 1, you might remember what the fuck this is. But we're reminded of what it is in this book, and there's a scene in the book where Harry uses a Bazoar kind of cheekily to get around an assignment. Yeah, basically. In potions, he's supposed to brew an antidote, can't brew it for whatever reason. So he just grabs a Bazoar, and he's like, because in the book, the Half-Blood Prince had written, he had like scratched out the whole antidote and was just like, just shove a Bazoar down their throat. And so Harry's like, oh, fucking, all right. I got nothing else. I'm just going to grab it and go for it. And the Slughorn thinks it's hilarious and gives him full marks for his cheek, basically. Yeah. So that's our reminder of what a Bazoar is. So then when Ron gets poisoned, we know what the fuck he's grabbing and how he knew to do that and how it saves him.
Yeah.
But we don't get any of that in the movie. It's just random. Harry just runs over, grabs the thing, is like, I saved you. And it's like, all right. Okay. What was that?
Another memory that we don't see in the movie.
This is an interesting one. I forgot about this in the book.
Yeah, completely. I had forgotten about this too. Is Voldemort coming back and
to interview for a job at
asking Dumbledore if he can have the Defense Against the Dark Arts job.
And this is like he is well on his path to becoming Voldemort at this point. He's not like fresh out of school, Tom Riddle.
He's not like fully fledged Voldemort yet.
No, but
he's on the way.
The description is his face is changing and he's got red eyes and he's fucking turning into Voldemort. And but he's like, I want to teach kids, and Dumbledore's like, no. But one of the things in that scene is that there's been an allusion to the idea that the Defense Against the Dark Arts job is cursed because nobody ever stays more than a year, and that's been the case in every book. There's always a new Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher every year in the books for various reasons, and everybody kind of make jokes about it being cursed, but we find out that the moment that Dumbledore turned down Voldemort for the job, ever since then was the point where there's never been a person teaching that class for more than 1 year, which had to have been for quite a while. That goes like 30 years, I feel like. It's right?
A lot of Defense Against the Dark Arts teachers.
At least like 20 years or something. Like it's got to be a while. It's got to have
been a while.
Yeah, because it's before Harry was ever born.
Yeah.
So let's say it's even 5 years before Harry's born. That's 5 plus 60. That's 21 straight years, roughly, of a different Defense Against the Dark.
I mean, no wonder people started saying it was cursed. Like,
yeah.
It's a long time.
It is. That's just, I will say, this feels like a thing that J.K. Rowling thought of random, like after she had written that and like, oh, it's cursed, and like she wanted a fun conceit and a fun way to have like a new teacher every semester, so the Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher just always, for whatever reason, it's kind of like a running gag, like not a gag, but, and so then she got to this and she's like, I know, I'll have a reason it actually is cursed. And it's like, well, maybe that doesn't make sense because they went through 25 teachers and, you know, like you would just run out of teachers at that point. Right. Like there's not that many teachers in that, wizard teachers, I would imagine, in the UK, but sure. And then everybody's favorite nickname for Ron, or for Harry specifically, Runel Waslib, which is not in the movie at all. But Ron has he's got a spell correcting quill from Fred and George's shop that's supposed to correct your spelling, but instead it spells everything terribly wrong. Well, it's supposed to correct your spelling, or I thought, because I thought he implied that it was like running out of juice basically, and that it did. But no, you're right, because when he writes his name in the book, and that was when he first got it, it still spells it wrong. It writes Runel Waslib. And it's a great moment too when Snape sees Ron's book. He sees the potion book that he got, and he goes, Runel Waslib, and he's like, that's what my friends call me. Harry does, because he's trying to make it up, which they cut all that completely, which doesn't really make sense, which we'll talk about after the Sectum Sempra scene, which is right now, it's super toned down in the movie. Yes, it is. Because this is a PG movie. Yes. And not even a PG-13. So we can't have Malfoy be completely slashed open and have blood spilling everywhere. Spraying out of his face and chest everywhere. Like, when I read that in the book, I was like, holy shit. And then when you see it in the movie, he's just like kind of bleeding a little bit. Yeah. And it's like, all right. Okay, yeah. Because in the movie, he's supposed to fly in the air, blood, I just imagine like a fountain of blood, like just truly terrifying stuff. But they really tone it down, which is a little disappointing. They also cut, in the book, he's in the bathroom with moaning Myrtle. Yeah, they cut Myrtle out completely. And he's crying, which he does cry in the movie, but she's like trying to comfort him. Yeah. And so then we lose kind of any explanation of why Snape comes into the bathroom, because it's Myrtle. She's yelling murder in the bathroom. Yeah, because she sees Harry do that. She sees them dueling, and she's trying to get him to stop, and then that happens, and she starts wailing, and that's why Snape shows up. Also, there's a little mention earlier. Again, this is a thing where to sort of stress how truly evil these people are, we get a story or a setup, or I think it's mentioned in an article, or I don't even remember how it's an article in the Daily Planet. It's an article in the Daily Planet, or the Daily Planet, the Daily Prophet, that Fenrir Greyback, who's a werewolf, who we see in the movie several times, but we don't really see him do anything, but he's in the movie, ate a 5-year-old kid. Yeah. Well, and it sets up that he likes biting children. Yeah, he specifically goes after kids. Yeah. Because he's fucking crazy. And then, to go back to the Sectum Sempra scene, after it happens in the movie, Harry just leaves and Snape does nothing. Yeah, so there's no consequence to the fact that he almost fucking killed Draco. Yeah, nothing happens in the movie. We just cut away from it. In the book, Snape like freaks out and is like, go, where did you learn that spell? Yeah. And he's like, it was in my book, I think, or he says or something. You know, he accidentally thinks about the book. And Snape legilimens him. And he sees the book, and Snape's like, go get it. And so Harry has to do the thing where he swaps it with Ron's and brings Ron's, which doesn't have the writing, which is where the Runel Waslib thing comes up. But there's so there's all this stuff about it. So then at that point, Snape knows essentially that he has Snape's old textbook, basically. But yeah, in the movie, there's just like, Snape's like, get out of here. Yeah, nothing happens. Like, come on. But he does go to hide the book. He does hide the book. Movie. He hides it in the room of requirement. We don't get the mention of... Yes. Okay, am I right in remembering that that's the diadem? Yes, I think it's diadem. Okay, because in the book, when he hides the potion book, he puts it in I think he puts it in the vanishing cabinet, actually, or does he not? He puts it somewhere. He puts it somewhere in the room of requirement. And so he can find it again later, he stacks up like a mannequin, like a bust. Yeah, like a bust of somebody. And then he puts a random rusty tiara, or like an old tiara that he finds on it. And I was like, I think, if I remember correctly, that's the diadem.
Yes, that ends up being the diadem.
Which is important. It's a Horcrux, we find out eventually, which is, I'm not exactly sure why it's there. I don't know if we ever explained why it was there or why Riddle had
There's
it there.
Probably an explanation
We'll see.
for that in the
I just don't
seventh
remember.
book.
Yeah. We'll see when we get to 7. But so that's kind of a little setup for book 7. We don't see that in this movie. We don't see that happen. We don't see that item.
And I'm astonished that they don't just have that in the background somewhere.
Yeah.
That would have been so easy
and now
to
there's
do.
a lot of junk in there. Maybe they do, and we just missed it. But I was trying to look out for it because especially because they do things like that. Like we mentioned, the necklace is in the second movie, and it doesn't show up until the 6th. This is literally one movie ahead of time. JK absolutely knew that was an important item. It wouldn't have been. It's weird to me.
To me, it wouldn't have been any extra trouble to just make sure there was a junky old tiara somewhere in that scene.
Yeah, very strange. Very strange. But then also, the thing that sucks about this is we get in the movie, it becomes a weird, cringy. Ugh. This is the kiss scene. This is where they kiss. This is where Harry and Ginny kiss for the first time. And again, every scene they give them is just so cringy and awkward. She hides the book, he closes his eyes, and then she comes back and kisses him while his eyes closed. And then she has a line that doesn't even really make sense. She says something like, "You can hide me up here too," or something like that. And it's gross,
and
awful.
Weird, and
again, it doesn't make any sense, or it doesn't make it clear to the audience what. Like give us any sense of their chemistry together, because again, it seems like they have none.
Right, well, they don't have any in the movie.
Yes, but in the book, their kiss comes at a very different time, which is when they win a Quidditch game.
Yes,
and they come back and they're celebrating, and Ginny kisses, and I do like at least that Ginny kisses him in the movie, because she comes and kisses him, or no, he kisses her in the book. He grabs her and kisses her. I'm pretty sure.
Harry looked around. There was Ginny running toward him. She had a hard, blazing look in her face as she threw her arms around him. And without thinking, without planning it, without worrying about the fact that 50 people were watching, Harry kissed her. Yeah. So he does kiss her, but she flings herself into his arms.
And there was a specific description that you mentioned there, that a hard, blazing look in her eye or on her face. That is not a moment. That is not a thing that ever happens in any of the movies with Ginny. She never has that look on her face. Which again, the fire is not there.
Well, you mentioned in the prequel that Daniel Radcliffe didn't think
this is his least favorite performance.
I'm like, maybe that's why.
Yeah, because he's all cringy,
all those
scenes.
Love scenes are so terrible.
Yeah, it's not even his performance; it's just the scenes. There's no, you could never do those well. Like, there's no way to perform those scenes.
What are you going to do with it?
Yeah.
There's nothing. You can't.
It's awful. The movie completely abandons the fact that Snape is the one who overheard the prophecy that foretold Harry.
That names Harry as the chosen one, essentially.
And that's, he finds out, and we'll talk about this a little bit more later, because this kind of changes the entire end of the film. Yeah. We talked about this a little bit when we were watching the movie. But in the book, Harry finds out that Snape was the one who overheard the Trelawney's prophecy and told Voldemort, and that's why Harry's parents are dead. Yeah. Essentially, it's Snape's fault that Harry's parents are dead, basically. And so that gives him extra motivation to super fucking hate Snape. But they drop that, which is, again, it feels like a mistake, but again, and then similarly, there's no setup for the ring. The Horcruxes are super mishandled, I think, in this movie in general, like where we just don't get enough information, and they're told, like we mentioned earlier, we don't explain why they are the things that they are, because the ring, we have no idea what it is.
No, we have no idea. They never say, they just show it.
It's just a ring. And that's kind of what he says. And that's sort of why they play on it could be anything, a book, a ring. And it's like, no, those aren't just random items. In the book, the ring belonged to the Gaunts.
Yeah, it belonged to his grandfather.
And so it's a super important ring. And I think even maybe it was Slytherin's ring before that. Well, ultimately find out what the ring was and why it's so important in book 7.
Yeah.
Because it's not just a ring. But we don't ever set up what the ring is, so we have no idea. And Dumbledore kind of constantly reminds us and says, hey, I'll tell you about this ring and where it came from and why my hand looks like this now. There's just one line about that in the movie where Dumbledore's like, I destroyed the Horcrux ring fucked up my hand.
Yeah.
That was tough. We're like, all right.
We see the same memory twice.
Yeah.
Slughorn's memory of young Tom Riddle at school.
Yeah.
And the first one is a false memory.
Yeah.
Where it makes it seem like he did something he didn't do. And then Harry gets the real memory. And kind of like the issue that I took with it is that young Tom Riddle is supposed to be really charming.
In the book, yeah.
Like, he's supposed to be super charming and just really good at, like, kind of schmoozing and getting people to tell him what he wants to know. But the kid that they had...
He's just a bit of a psycho.
He's terrifying.
Yeah.
He plays it... In my opinion, he plays it like someone who's never met a sociopath's idea of what a sociopath is.
Yes.
Like, his face is just, like, completely blank, and he has, like, no emotion or inflection in his voice at all.
Yeah.
And I'm like, he's supposed to be charming.
Yeah. Yeah, he doesn't come across charming at all.
There's probably a little bit of an edge there of, like, something's not quite right.
Yeah.
But he's supposed to be kind of likable.
At least, somewhat likable.
Otherwise, people wouldn't want to hang out with him.
Yeah. This kid does not necessarily come across that way.
No.
And another thing going on that scene, and we'll talk about it now because we're getting really into the meat of the Horcrux issues in this movie, is that he, like we said, so in the book, Dumbledore knows what Horcruxes are.
Yes.
He knows what they are. He knows Voldemort's making them. The reason he wants this memory from Slughorn is to kind of round out his knowledge about what Voldemort's plans for the Horcruxes were.
Right. He wants confirmation.
He wants confirmation,
of
essentially.
His suspicions, and he wants to know, like, the exact number.
Yeah.
That
He has the
Voldemort was
idea.
thinking.
He has the idea that Voldemort's making more than one, and he
Yes.
wants to know, like, how many, so that now we can kind of figure that out, and just kind of confirmation that yes, that is actually what is going on. And so in the book, we hear the word Horcrux. We hear Riddle say in the memory before it's in the broken memory or the changed memory. We hear Riddle be like, "Hey, what's a Horcrux?" And then it kind of fades weird, and Slughorn's like, "I don't know what you're talking about. The get out of here, you dummy!" And then it kind of comes back. In the movie version of that memory, we don't hear him say Horcrux. It kind of fades out. And so the mystery, the reveal in the movie is of Horcruxes in general.
Yes.
In the book, they're like, they hear the word Horcrux, and they're kind of thinking about, like, well, and so, like, Hermione's trying to do research, and he's like, well, what is a Horcrux? Because Dumbledore, this was a little bit of a problem in the book that Dumbledore didn't explain what a Horcrux was, because Dumbledore knows what it is.
Yeah.
Why didn't he just tell Harry what it is? And then that was a little strange. So I kind of get the movie going the way it did and having the Horcrux be the reveal. But here's the problem when you do that. It makes this scene... We had so much problems with this scene when we were watching it because Dumbledore, they get out of the memory, they get the full memory, and now Dumbledore knows... What he knows is what's confusing, because in the book, he already knew what Horcruxes were. I feel like I'm repeating myself, but I'm going to try to establish this. In the book, he already knew what Horcrux was. He knew Voldemort was making them. He's just getting confirmation and how many there are.
Yes.
In the movie, it plays like Voldemort is, oh my gosh, he's making Horcruxes.
Right. It plays like Dumbledore didn't know he was making Horcruxes.
Yeah.
And now he's just now figured it out, which is not the case.
No.
Because he says in the book
Literally.
that he started to figure it out when Harry brought him the diary.
And he says that in the movie. He says, I knew the diary you brought me was dark, but I didn't know how dark until tonight after they get out of that memory. And I'm like, but that's not true, because literally the next sentence, he's like, by the way, I think I found another one of these things. Another Horcrux. And I'm like, well, how are you finding them if you didn't know what they were?
He's already destroyed the ring, too.
Yeah.
So if he didn't know, how could he have found the ring if he didn't know he was looking for Horcruxes? And it doesn't make any sense.
No, it doesn't make any sense. And so the movie tries to play it both ways, where it's like he didn't know what Horcruxes were, or didn't realize Riddle was making Horcruxes until that memory, but then he very clearly had to have known in order to be doing the other things he's been doing in the movie. I'm sitting there like, wait a second, you can't, what? What are you saying Dumbledore knew and didn't know? Like, I'm so confused. It's so fucking strange. It's so strange. Handling of Horcruxes was really rough.
And then again, the idea that Horcruxes could be anything. It's just nonsense.
No. Oh, and then at the end of that scene, Dumbledore goes, Harry, I want you to come with me. I think I found another one. I want you to come with me. And Harry's like, cool. And then the scene cuts, and Dumbledore's up in the tower talking to Snape. And Harry's coming up the stairs.
Yeah, it's a weird cut.
Wait, what happened? Because it would have been one thing if Dumbledore was like, all right, you want to come with me? Tomorrow at dawn, come to the
astronomy tower.
Or whatever, or something. I assume that's the idea, but it's just so jarring because it seems like they're about to go right then. And then all of a sudden Snape's there and they're in a different place.
It's something ended up on the cutting room floor there. And
absolutely something was on the cutting room floor. The transition is very confusing. And I'm like, wait, what's going on? Okay, fine.
But then they head out on their adventure to the Cliffs of Insanity. Yeah,
they do. We get to the Cliffs of Insanity. In the book, they have to swim, which is a fun fact. They have to swim into the cave.
And Dumbledore's apparently really good at it.
Got a great breaststroke. Yeah. Got a great breaststroke. I like the. I would have been fun to see Dumbledore swimming with his wand in his mouth, like a knife, like a fucking. He's got his knife in his mouth, swimming. It would have been badass, but no swimming. They just get into the cave, and I thought this was really interesting. In the book, so they find the entrance to the cave, and Dumbledore's kind of like doing magic. Mm-hmm. And there's a great line in the book here where Harry's kind of watching Dumbledore do this, and he's kind of like murmuring and like feeling around and like whispering to himself. And Harry's like, this is really interesting. And he goes, it's very different type of magic. He goes, but I found that loud noises and sparks are often the sign of an unskilled wizard as opposed to a skilled wizard, where Dumbledore's doing like, not even really using his wand. He's just sort of like
very subtle,
feeling the magic and like, doing super advanced stuff. But he finds out this door is there, and Dumbledore realizes, he goes, and he makes a joke, or not a joke. He chuckles to himself and goes, how crude, riddle, or something like that. Because he realizes it's like a blood door. You need to
you have to give a blood offering.
A blood offering to get in. And Dumbledore very much is derisive of this type of magic. He's like, this is very Voldemort thing to do, because again, Voldemort puts all of his stock in like power. Yes. And his idea is that you have to weaken yourself before you get in. And it's just, I like the idea, and they don't play this in the movie at all, that Dumbledore is like, this guy never learns. It's always the same with him. Like, it's just like, he's got his priorities on the wrong thing. And then so Harry, he cuts his hand and they open it and they get inside. And then they all that stuff's pretty good. The way all this plays out is pretty good. And we get to the end where he's drinking the potion. And the potion in the book, it's supposed to be violently green. Yes. Like, it's like neon green as described in the book. This is a little thing. I don't care that it changed it, because they do a very interesting sort of aesthetic choice of this whole...
Yeah, the color grading in that scene looked really interesting. Yeah, I
like
what it was called.
Yeah, it doesn't really... I don't know. I'm sure it has a name. It's very high contrast, very... it's also like a black and white, essentially, with like a blue hue to it, kind of like a bluish purplish hue.
Not quite black and white.
Yeah, like blue's the only color you can kind of see. Like Carrie's jacket has blue stripes on it, and you can kind of see that. But yeah, it's very interesting. I actually like it. I think it looks cool. But so the potion ends up kind of just being like blackish, bluish, which is fine. But the whole reason the cover of the book's green, right, is because they're at that potion and it's the light is emanating,
it's glowing at them.
Yeah, and it's like, that's all. The book cover is... You change the book cover. You can't do that. Oh, also, there's no setup for the Inferi. They never mentioned in this movie.
And they are mentioned several times in the book before we get to this.
And they're even... When they get there, Dumbledore even says, like, those are Inferi out there, pretty much. Like, they see the one jump, and he goes, those are... Remember fire. They don't like fire.
Yeah, they all look like Gollum.
They do all look like Gollum.
It just looked like a million Gollums.
They absolutely
running
do
up out of the water.
Oh, we're almost there. This hasn't been as long as some of our... Oh, it's pretty close. Great line. Again, the moments with Harry and Dumbledore, they just don't ever hit in this movie series for me. They just never land. And there's a great line when they're leaving the cave, after Dumbledore is dying, essentially, from drinking this potion. He's, like, slowly dying. And Harry says, "Don't worry," to Dumbledore. And Dumbledore responds, "I'm not worried, Harry. I'm with you."
Yeah. The thing that I love about that line in the book is that it's a callback to an earlier line.
Oh, yeah?
Before Harry leaves with Dumbledore, when he's leaving instructions with Ron and Hermione, because he suspects that something is going to go down.
Yes.
So he leaves instructions with them, and he gives them the last
of the Felix Felicis.
Yeah, the good luck potion.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, don't you want it? Because you're about to go do this super dangerous thing. And Harry says, I'll be fine. I'll be with Dumbledore.
Yeah. Yeah, and so, it is a good callback in that way because, Dumbledore dying, and it's just one of those moments where it's such an important little character moment for the both of them.
Yes.
And to not have it, again, it just truly feels like the person adapting these movies didn't understand Dumbledore at all.
Yeah.
Like, not, I won't say at all, but just didn't understand what makes Dumbledore. Like, they missed almost everything of value about his character that is interesting. Mm-hmm. It's not that he's like a super good wizard. Like, that's part of it, but like that's the least important part of what makes him an interesting character.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to say the least. It's like one of the least important parts of what makes him an interesting character. It's the little things about how he talks and his personality and his playfulness and his but ability to be incredibly intimidating while being playful, but also
he doesn't take himself seriously.
He doesn't take himself seriously
about Dumbledore,
while also being incredibly cocky at the same time.
Yes,
like, he mentions, and at least I liked that they did at least have like at least one of those lines in this where when he's drinking the potion and Harry's like, "Well, I should do it," and Dumbledore's like, "I'm way more clever than you. Like, I should," and like there's moments like that where he's incredibly cocky at times because he knows he's really good, but but he also doesn't take himself too seriously.
Yeah.
And it's just, he's so nuanced and so interesting, and the movie just don't capture like any of that. It's really rough.
The movies just really struggle with Dumbledore.
It's hard. I can imagine it being tough to do. Like, that's because it's a very nuanced kind of thing to it's you have to have a lot of moments and a lot of little lines and it have to be played. They have to land just right.
Yeah.
In order for it to feel right. And I can see why it would be tough, but they didn't pull it off in these movies. He still has moments where he's all right, but it's just probably the worst overall things about the films.
So the big scene.
Oh, the big scene. Dumbledore's death. We're there. This is it. So I like the visual change in the movie where they have Harry, Dumbledore tells Harry to hide downstairs. Yeah. And he's looking up.
Right, because you can kind of see through.
He sees through the floor, and he can see up to where Dumbledore and Malfoy are. In the book, Harry is under his cloak, his invisibility cloak, and Dumbledore petrifies him, so he can't move. And so he's petrified, so he can't move. So he literally is powerless to intervene. Yes. In anything that's happening with Malfoy and Snape and Dumbledore. Now this is a really interesting change, and originally I forgot about this moment because I was like, we see him down there, I'm like, you can't do that, you can't have him down there, because Harry would never, even though Dumbledore's like, stay down there and don't come up no matter what, Harry just absolutely would not let, like, especially if Malfoy there, like, because he knows he can take Malfoy. It's not like Malfoy's like he could handle Malfoy. There's no way in a million years he would just stay down there and let Dumbledore die. Like, it just wouldn't. That's just not. Harry is, if anything, like, tragically heroic. Yeah. So it's like, that would never work. But this is where it's interesting, is they add the scene where Snape shows up. In the book, Snape just runs in or kind of comes up through the doorway, and again, Harry's invisible and can't move, and then it all plays out similarly. In the movie, Snape comes up behind Harry and walks up to him and goes, shh, and like, I'm gonna go take care of this. And Harry goes, okay. Like, Harry trusts him in that moment. It's a really interesting change for a couple reasons, I think. One, it's a little tough to buy that Harry would trust. Harry has notoriously not trusted Snape always. Yes. Forever. But that's book. Here's the thing. This change because it is a very interesting change in the sense that now it's like this super violation of trust. Harry trusted Snape to fix this problem, and Snape killed Dumbledore. Yeah. And so, like,
he did the opposite of fix it.
Yes. So it's like a very dramatic moment for the viewers, and for us watching, you're like, oh, fuck. You were like, I wanted to like you, Snape. You came and we thought you were going to save the day, and then you fucked it up. You fucked it all up. Like, so I get it from a dramatic moment, like why it was appealing. But this only works with movie Snape for a couple of reasons. One, he's not nearly as awful, and Harry doesn't hate him nearly as much in the movies.
He's way less awful in the movies.
Way less awful in the movies than he is in the book, in all the books. But more importantly, as we mentioned earlier, they left out the fact that Harry learns that Snape is the reason his parents are dead.
Yeah.
If that had happened earlier in this movie,
this scene
would not work at all. It would 0% work because Harry would be like, "Oh, Snape, cool. Avada Kedavra," like he would just fucking kill him, or try to. Like there's no way it would work. So they had to drop the scene, which again is kind of important that Harry finds out that Snape is the reason his parents are dead. It's interesting. It's an interesting change, but yeah, it's one of those changes that only ever could have worked in the movies. I prefer the way the book does it. I know why the movie changed it because again, we talked about this a little bit. A lot of the scenes where Harry's under an invisibility cloak, they change it so he's not under invisibility cloak, so we can see him.
It's not very interesting.
It's not as interesting, so I get it. They would have to come up with a very clever way to shoot it if they did it the way it was in the book to make it as tense as it is in the movie. I think they could have done it, but it's an interesting change, and it never would have worked in the book. Like with the book characters being the book characters, the way they do it in the movie just never would have worked. It wouldn't have made any sense.
Not in a million years.
No. I also love that Malfoy says something about mudbloods, and Dumbledore's like, "Don't say that word around me." I'm like, Dumbledore is dying, and he's still calling out bigots. Love it.
A lot of little things that were missing since they eliminated the little battle.
They eliminated, and I read that the reason they got rid of this was they didn't want it to be redundant with the battle at the end of Deathly Hallows Part 2. I don't think it would have been redundant.
Probably not.
But I also think they just didn't want to take away from the drama of or Dumbledore dying and Harry chasing Snape.
That's fair enough.
I get it. But there's some little things you miss. And my big thing, again, I've mentioned this every time because there's so many moments where Hagrid gets to go fucking beast mode on people, and we never get to see it in the movie. If it doesn't happen in any of the 7 ones, I'm going to be so upset. Because in this one, there's a moment where he runs out of his hut as the Death Eaters are running away to get out of Hogwarts grounds so they can apparate. And Hagrid comes running out and starts fighting them all, and they're like trying to stun him or curse him or whatever, and they're just bouncing off him because he's a fucking giant or half giant. I was just like, how fucking sweet would that be? And again, they do the same thing in the end of the book 5, and we don't see it where the same thing happens. And we didn't see it in the movie. It's just one time where people are trying to shoot spells at Hagrid, and he goes full Hulk mode and just starts breaking people. Like, why don't we ever get to see that in the movies? It's so disappointing, and it just feels like a thing it's like made for being in the movie, like a moment of Hagrid going beast mode.
But there is an interesting moment with Snape.
Yeah.
At the end of the movie.
Yeah, and this was a lot of speculation. I remember this when 6 came out because it's an interesting dialogue choice where Harry is chasing Snape and he's casting spells at him. And every time he casts it, he says, stupefy or crucio or whatever. I think he tries to crucio him at one point, and Snape's blocking them all easily. And he yells at Harry. He's like, basically says, you got to learn your nonverbal spells or you're never going to...
Yeah, because he'll always know what's coming.
Yeah, I always know it's coming if you don't master nonverbal spells. And they dropped that from the movie completely. Yeah. It's not in there. Again, they dropped nonverbal spells kind of completely. Although they do nonverbal spells in the movie, like in the duel between Harry and Draco in the bathroom, they're both not saying anything until he says Septum Semper. But it's kind of one of our little clues to the readers in the book that Snape's potentially still trying to help.
Yeah, giving Harry some very important advice.
Yes,
there.
That Harry needs.
Yeah.
Which it's interesting. I don't know how much I like it because I don't necessarily... the more I've thought about it and the more I've come to not like Snape over the course of the books, rereading them, I don't know if it necessarily makes sense that Snape would do that. Like, he doesn't like Voldemort for his own very personal, selfish reasons. Like the only reason Snape's doing what he's doing is because he hates Voldemort because Lily's dead. But
he also doesn't like Harry. He also doesn't like Harry for his own very personal and very selfish reasons.
And it's just, it feels like, and I mean, I guess the idea is that he's hoping, ultimately wants Harry to defeat Voldemort. Yeah. Even though he hates him. It's just, I don't know. It's like, yeah, I'm not sure I necessarily buy him still like teaching him in this moment. Like, no, we gotta learn them nonverbal spells, by the way. Hagrid doesn't cry enough in this movie.
Yeah.
when Dumbledore dies. In the book, he's just supposed to be crying and like unconsolable. In the movie, he's just kind of standing there looking at Dumbledore's body, and I'm like, Hagrid is an incredibly emotional person in all of the books.
And Dumbledore was his father.
Essentially his father. Yeah. He should be absolutely bawling, or at least, and he's not. He's just kind of standing there looking sad in the movie, and it's like,
And then we don't get any of the stuff at the end with Bill and Fleur.
Because neither of them are in it. Bill gets turned into a slightly werewolfish.
He's werewolfish, yeah.
Yeah, he gets bit by Fenrir, but Fenrir's not in werewolf form, so they're not sure what's going to happen.
Yeah, they're kind of like, we don't know. We've never seen this before.
Yeah. But Bill gets all mangled, and Mrs. Weasley's implying when they're in the hospital wing that Fleur's not going to want to marry him anymore, and Fleur gets a great character moment of like, you think I want to marry him?
Yeah.
And she's like, get out of my way, I'm taking care of him, he's my husband. So like she kind of redeems herself in the eyes of everybody by being fiercely loyal to Bill. But we don't get any of those characters. We don't get Dumbledore's funeral in the movie, right?
Yeah. No, we don't.
Which, whatever. It feels like we needed it. Is it at the beginning of the next movie? I don't remember. It might be at the beginning of the next movie. I can't remember. But there's a funeral at the end of this one, and lots of people are there. It's kind of interesting because like Umbridge is there and stuff.
Yeah, Umbridge shows up.
And like you're like, it's an interesting scene. And Grop is there, which is the fun thing, which would have been nice to see. Grop shows up and he's like in a suit, and he's come a long way since we've last seen Grop. He's being very well mannered and consoling Hagrid in a suit, which would have been fun to see. And then Harry breaks up with Jenny, and then the book ends.
Pretty much.
Which they don't show that. They don't I don't wonder if they're going to do anything in the beginning of 7 to sort of...
I don't remember 7 or 8.
No.
Like at all.
Also, though, they didn't do very much to establish them as actually in a relationship this movie.
In fact, I would argue that the movie kind of does the opposite by having her say something about like hiding him in the in the
or
room
hiding her in the
like it implies that they're keeping their relationship on the down low.
Yeah, because in the book it's very much not a secret. They're just together, and Ron's okay with it, relatively speaking. But yeah, it's and so Harry has to break up with her. He's like, basically, he's like, I'm not coming back to Hogwarts, and you're not going to be safe around me. So we got to go our own ways. And she's like, all right, fine. But anyways, that's it. That's all I ever better in the book. There are lots of little things, and then some major like weird things. That, again, this movie overall, I thought was pretty good adaptation, relatively speaking. It's just some of the weird.
It doesn't have the same problems that 4 and 5 did.
Yeah.
Where it's like hard to follow and there's big plot holes.
Yeah. But it's just little things that don't add up if you didn't read the books.
It's kind of like it's a paler, less interesting version
of the book,
of the story.
Yeah. But it is shot really well, which helps. The movie looks gorgeous. It's a really well paced. I think it's probably my favorite since 3. Mm-hmm. And overall, I thought it was pretty good. But it's definitely not without faults, but it's not nearly as bad as 4 or 5.
Yeah, it is shot more interestingly. Yeah. You think you're right on that than 4 or 5.
It was nominated for an Oscar for that, which none of the other ones were. So there you go. Let's do Muggle Questions Part 2.
What is an Auror? McGonagall said that. I don't know. I don't even know if I'm saying it right.
An Auror is a dark wizard catcher.
Yes.
We've kind of made this comparison before, kind of like a Wizarding World version of the FBI.
Or something like that.
Something like that.
I think, and they're mentioned in book 5. Oh, they're mentioned numerous times, but because they're mentioned maybe first in book 4 because they mentioned that Mad-Eye Moody was an Auror.
Yeah.
And again, I don't think that's mentioned in the movies, but in the book it is. And then in 5, Harry tells, and this scene was cut out where he decides what he wants to do for his career, and he tells McGonagall, "I want to be an Auror." Yeah. And that's where Trevor's question comes from. Because McGonagall comes up to him in the beginning of this movie and goes, "Hey, did you still want to be an Auror? You need to take potions," and that whole thing, which is kind of how it plays out in the book similarly. But that's like the only time you would know what you're like, what? And he wants to be an Auror? What? When did that happen? I don't, because again, that's not in movie 5.
Right.
Unless it's a deleted scene, which it might be. But yeah, that's what an Auror is. They catch bad wizards, which is obviously why Harry wants to do it.
Is it an inherently bad thing to talk to snakes? I know we've learned that Salazar Slytherin did it. Everyone was weirded out that Harry could do it. Is it just because Salazar Slytherin could talk to snakes and the parcel tongue thing that's why it's not good to talk to snakes?
So this is, it's a skill that's associated with evil because a lot of dark wizards could do it,
Yes.
including Slytherin and Voldemort.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't say that there's anything inherently bad.
And Grindelwald,
about.
I believe.
Yeah.
I think too. We'll find out for sure in probably Fantastic Beasts too, but I can't remember. I think he did too.
Probably.
Yeah. And the reason Harry can do it is because Voldemort cursed him. Not Harry didn't have it innately.
Right.
It's because has part of Voldemort's soul inside of him.
Yeah.
That's why he can talk to snakes.
What was the end game of the attack on the Weasleys on Christmas Day? What was the point?
The end game on that attack was kind of, we talked about earlier, symbolically, thematically.
That loss of innocence.
The loss of innocence, the loss of a place that his home, essentially. But yeah, narratively, it's kind of an attempt on Harry's life, although it's made clear that Voldemort wants to kill Harry himself later.
Yeah, so that doesn't really make sense.
So it's kind of just a reminder of who the Death Eaters are. And that's kind of what I saw it as. It's like, remember these people?
They're evil and they're destructive and they're about to burn your house
also,
down.
remember she killed Sirius, because she yells it again in this part of the movie. I killed Sirius Black. Yeah. Remember, Harry doesn't like her. Okay, well, moving on. So that's kind of the point of that. There really wasn't an end game, though. They're just causing destruction. Maybe they were trying to get Harry.
Maybe.
Like, get him for Voldemort. It's not really clear. And again, it's not in the book, so we have no extra knowledge on that. Let's do better in the movie!
My life has taught me one lesson, Hugo, and not the one I thought it would. Happy endings only happen in the movies.
I think it was a good decision, although I missed the talking between the two ministers. I think it was a good idea to show us the stuff they talk about.
Yes.
Instead of just having them talk about it.
The bridge collapsing and all that
Because they
stuff.
mention that bridge collapse in that scene in the book, but we just hear them talk about it. Seeing it happen in the movie makes a lot of sense. Finally, that thing I've been talking about throughout all the movies, show the Death Eaters doing bad things so we understand that they're bad. You don't just tell us that they're bad.
A basic writing principle, show,
Yes.
don't tell.
Yeah. So I like that. I wish they would have interspersed it. I wish they would have had the opening Muggle scene.
Yes.
And then when he starts talking about it, cut to us seeing the events happening. That would have been cool. I think they could have done that, but,
we also see them take who I assume was Ollivander.
because we see Harry and Ron go there later, and they say this is Ollivander's shop, and that was the one from earlier. And it's mentioned in the book that Ollivander is missing.
Yes.
But we see them take him in this opening scene in the movie, which I thought was a good idea. I don't think you would know that as a movie watcher. You wouldn't put together that was Ollivander until later when Harry and Ron showed up. If you remember, that was the same story, you might.
But I think it works on that other level of like, oh, that's them doing something really horrible and scary, and we get kind of this idea of how terrified people would be that could happen to them.
Yeah, I agree.
I also think that moving the unbreakable vow scene was a good idea.
I agree too. They moved it way back. In the book, it's like the second chapter. In the movie, it happens after the introduction of reintroduction of all our heroes again, basically.
Yeah. So we get to see the protagonists sooner, which is important for a movie.
Yeah.
And it also moves the making of that vow closer to when we see Draco. So we have some kind of like association there in our minds.
I thought this was a little fun detail, but when Harry and Ron get to potions and they're going to get they don't have books because they weren't going to take potions, and they go to get them, and there's two left. One of them's like a new good copy, and the other one's like the shitty beat up Half-Blood Prince copy, and they like stand there for a second and then wrestle over it.
Yeah.
I thought it was a fun, like, good moment between them. It just makes sense as like two teenagers. Like, I don't want the fucking shit. No, I thought it was fun. That was a good little moment. And this is a big change, but I think it makes sense. And it maybe doesn't make sense in the book because we are third-person limited perspective.
We're more or less limited to Harry.
So we don't know what Malfoy's doing because Harry doesn't know what Malfoy's doing. But in the movie, we get to see him working on the cabinet, the vanishing cabinet. We don't necessarily know what he's doing or why, but we see him.
We know he's up to something.
He's up to something, and I think that works pretty well. I think it's a good sort of mystery through line of us trying to figure out what is he doing with this cabinet? What is this? What's the goal here? Like what?
Right, and especially if you are going to cut the plot line about Harry being super suspicious and trying to figure out what he's doing, we need to have some kind of consistent through line reminder that, yes, he is up to something.
And it also works really well in a movie because, again, you get to... Almost all those scenes have no dialogue. We're just showing. Because if you're doing it the way the book does it, all we get is lines of Harry looking at the Marauder's map going, what is Malfoy up to? Like, that's how it would play out in the movie if they kept that. But instead, cutting that and showing Malfoy working on this thing is a good, mysterious, like, what is going on? So I think that's a pretty solid way to do that. Drunk Slughorn.
Yeah, he spills his drink all over Hermione.
When they're in the Three Broomsticks. And I remember cracking up in the theater at this line. He spills his drink on Hermione. He's like, oh, all hands on deck, Granger. It's just a great line. And I always made me laugh. And I remember I had a vivid moment of remembering laughing at that line the first time I saw the movie.
So then Harry and Ron are talking about Ginny dating.
Yes.
And Harry is like trying to play it cool and like not reveal to Ron that
Ron's like, why would anybody like Jenny? Like, what do those guys see in Jenny? And Harry's like trying to like, I don't know, like, you know, she's smart and funny and she's got nice skin.
Like, Harry, you picked literally the creepiest thing. Like the creepiest possible thing. Could have said nice hair, nice eyes. But no, you went with skin.
I like the idea. Again, I think they're going for the awkward teenager. He's trying to come up with something he doesn't want to say, and she's got nice boobs, baby. Like, he does, but like he tries to come up with something innocuous. And so the first thing he kind of stumbles upon is like skin. She's got nice skin.
I feel like the only way you could have been creepier is to say she had nice feet.
Yeah. This is great.
A McGonagall line,
which is not in the movie, not in the book.
When they get back after Katie Bell gets cursed McGonagall just looks at them and it says, "Why is it always you three?"
And Ron is like, "I've been asking myself that for 6 years." It's like, a good.
McGonagall is done with your shit, you guys.
Yeah, it's good. I like it. It's pretty fun. I think the movie handles the Ron fake drinking the Felix Felicis better than the book. Because I remember rereading it in the book and thinking, well, this is weird. Because in the book, all of these lucky things do happen. And I'm like, but he didn't drink it.
Yeah.
So then all these random lucky things just happened to happen? Like one player, it just seemed weird. And like in the movie, I think they just make it play out better in the movie where Ron knows, because in the book, Ron drinks it before he realizes that Harry supposedly put the stuff in. Ron just drinks it. And then afterwards, Hermione's like, did you put something in his drink? Did you? What? And Ron's like, what? And then it's to me, it seems unclear whether or not Ron knew before the match that he had Felix Felicis in his drink. It's very clear in the movie that he does know, or that he thinks he did, which makes more sense that he would then be all carefree and like, yeah, I'll be fine. I don't know. Right. I just thought it made more sense in the movie the way they did it. It played out better.
So before we talked a little bit about the Christmas party at Slughorn's, but there's also a preliminary dinner
a little
party,
dinner,
to see who makes the cut, basically, is the idea. So we get that scene in the movie, and there's part of it that I love when Hermione says that her parents are dentists.
Yeah.
Where you wouldn't notice it unless you were looking at Harry, but when she says that, he like looks around the table at everyone like he's daring them to say shit about her parents.
I did not notice
it's amazing.
That. I did not notice that. That's pretty funny. This is a great line. It's a little addition. I also remember chuckling at this, where Hermione is talking to Harry and saying, like, you know, Romilda Vane wants to go out with you. She thinks you're the chosen one. Yeah. And Harry, but I am the chosen one. It's good. It's a good line. It's good. It's funny. It's a nice little ad. And it plays into Harry. And it's just it makes it. It's something you don't really see much in the books of Harry kind of making light of the situation a little bit, which you think he might to some extent. I don't know.
I mean, what else can you do?
Yeah. We already talked about the attack on the Burrow. I want to talk about this again because I want to mention it. I don't like this change about the Horcruxes and the memory with the Horcruxes, where in the book we hear him say Horcrux, but in the movie we don't. I don't like that. But the thing that does make sense, and I kind of mentioned it earlier, is that in the book when Harry knows it's a Horcrux that he's trying to get this memory about.
Right.
Again, why doesn't Dumbledore explain what that is to him? Just so he at least has a vague... Because, like, Hermione's doing all this research. Also, Hermione can find literally nothing about these, anywhere.
My guess would that it would be in the restricted section?
She said she looked through the entire restricted... She found in one book in the restricted section, and it's probably the same one Tom Riddle found, because he found one book in the restricted section that says it's in I think it's called, like... A Magic Most Evil or something like that is the name of the book or whatever. It says one line about like and Horcruxes are real fucked up, basically. Like, so don't mess with those. And that's like all there is. And so she doesn't know anything about them. And I think the implication that's like the same thing Riddle found, and he just wanted to know what they were. But it's like, it's really like, I feel like people would at least know. I bet it would be really hard to do, but people would understand the idea of what a Horcrux is. Like, it doesn't seem like that, just the knowledge of what it is, because it is such an crazy, powerful, intense piece of magic that people, like, in the sense of like, even like an urban legend type of thing of like people, I feel like there would be some sort of cultural knowledge of what a Horcrux is.
You would think. I don't know. I guess Dumbledore bans books.
I guess he does. It just was strange to me. And so having it where they don't have to go do... anyways.
Yeah. I also thought that having Harry, like, try to mimic the Slughorn memory was an interesting choice. The
first time he tries to get Slughorn to give him the memory, he basically play acts exactly what Tom Riddle said to him. Yeah, it was interesting. There's a great line from Dumbledore. This is a good one. This is a good Dumbledore. They add him, but this is the thing. They add random other Dumbledore lines that are still okay.
Instead of keeping his great lines
really
from
great
the
lines
book, they just add their own Dumbledore
that aren't
lines.
Quite as good, but are still okay. And this is one of the moments where you finally see a little bit of the Dumbledore, is where Ron's in the hospital wing and Lavender comes in and Hermione's there, and Ron is asleep and he mumbles Hermione in his sleep, and Lavender loses her shit and runs out. She like starts bawling and runs out of the hospital wing, and it cuts to Dumbledore and he's to be young and feel love's keen sting. Which that's a fun Dumbledore line. It's one of the only times they capture him at all. But yeah, it's good. But again, just give him the other fucking lines. Give him the other lines.
I liked the way the movie portrayed the effects of Felix
I had that in
Felicis.
The movie, nailed it. But yeah, it's really good. And in specific, I love the scene where he's sitting there talking, where they're at Aragog's funeral, and somebody says something about the eyes or whatever. I think Slughorn says something about their eyes or something, and Harry goes, "Don't forget the pincers." And he makes his hand he moves his hand like pincers by his face. It's great. I thought Radcliffe was great in that whole sequence. Like I thought he was brilliant. I actually this isn't a completely fabricated thing for the movie, where when Harry's getting the memory about Riddle from Slughorn in Hagrid's cabin and Hagrid passes out. I like the little story they added for Slughorn, where he's telling the story about the fish in the bowl, and there was a flower that turned into a fish. And I thought it was a very poetic, interesting...
Yeah, and it's a personal connection to Lily. Other than him just always saying, "Oh, she's so talented. She's so talented and so smart."
Yeah, but she gave him this thing, and he really cherished it. And I thought it was a really well acted scene, a really well delivered scene. I think he does a really good job with it. But I thought it was really... A smart way to change that scene to really understand why Slughorn cared about her so much, and why he's thus willing to give Harry this memory to some extent.
Yeah, it was a good choice. We get another good Dumbledore line that they added.
Yeah, again, they added it. It's not from the book, but when they're going to the cave.
Yes.
Right? So this happens, yeah.
So they're about to apparate, and Harry says, "I thought you couldn't apparate on Hogwarts grounds."
And Dumbledore turns to him and says, "Being me has its privileges." Which, again, good. That's a good...
Yeah, it's a good Dumbledore line.
A couple little moments where they capture it. There's just not enough of it. I like the shot. It doesn't happen in the book at all, where Harry gets drugged. He does get grabbed by the Inferi on the island in the cave, and like he kind of is struggling. In the movie, he gets pulled under the water, and whatever, it's fine. The thing I like about it is we get a really cool shot of the fire rushing across. It looks really neat.
A cool visual.
Yeah, because we're seeing from
that drug underwater.
Yeah, we're seeing point of view from under the water, kind of, and past Harry's outline, and then you see it's kind of green and blue up there, and then all of a sudden these flames are. It just looks really cool, and you wouldn't be able to get that shot unless he fell underwater. So
yeah.
I mean, again, it's kind of cool, and I think that whole sequence with Dumbledore in the fire is pretty awesome. And then this is a little thing, not a little thing. It's kind of like the big moment after Dumbledore dies. And this is not in the book, but I think it's a smart addition.
Yeah, especially since we don't see his funeral at the end of this.
Everybody's gathered in the courtyard around his body, all of the students and teachers and everything. And they had fired the Dark Mark into the... Bellatrix had fired the Dark Mark into the sky after Dumbledore died, whereas in the book it happens before he dies. But it doesn't matter. And they all, like, one at a time start raising their wands into the air. And they all do it. And eventually they all do it. And then it, like, disintegrates and breaks away the...
Yeah, it's a nice
dark
moment.
Mark. It's a nice moment. And it's just...
like, unity.
Yeah. That's it for Better in the Movie. Let's do Muggle Questions Part 3.
Was the apple/canary being teleported in the cabinet significant? Was it code? What was the point of that?
So we've mentioned that Malfoy is trying to repair the cabinet so that it can transfer things between the one that's at Hogwarts and the other one that's at Borgin and Burke's.
Yes.
So he's like testing it with these different things, and the apple comes back with like a big chunk missing.
Yeah.
And the first bird dies.
Yeah, comes back dead.
So we know that the cabinets aren't ready yet.
Yes.
And then second bird, I guess.
Yeah.
The second bird comes back alive.
And we're like, boom.
Yeah.
It's good to go.
Why is the Room of Requirement full of so much shit from what looks like a garage sale? It was very clean and tidy in the last book/movie.
The Room of Requirement changes to suits the needs of the user, and this particular version of the Room of Requirement is not the same version, obviously, that they used for Defense Against the Dark Arts.
Earlier, they needed it to be
a training
ground, a classroom, basically. In this book, it appears most often as a place to hide.
Yes.
To hide things.
And that's why it's full of junk, is because students for centuries have been hiding their junk in this room, and teachers and all kinds of people have been hiding their junk in this room. So that's why it's full of stuff. Like literally over the last 300, however many years Hogwarts has existed.
But I guess the movies didn't do a very good job of explaining the Room of Requirement.
No, they didn't. And it also, it's not clear. I don't think that's why what it is that there are people hiding stuff in it. Yeah. It's just he gets in there and there's stuff in there. But yeah, in the book it's explained that because Harry finds it for the first time as this version of the Room of Requirement when he's trying to hide which we see it in the movie too, but when he's trying to hide the potion book, he goes to the Room Requirement. He's like, I need somewhere to hide this. I need somewhere to hide this. And then it shows up, and then it's this room, and that's where the Vanishing Cabinet is too. So
yeah.
Did they go into the books on why Aragog died? Was it just old age?
Old age.
Yeah.
I don't think they have specifically said.
He says he's sick. Hagrid says he's sick early in the book, which they're mentioned it a couple times. In the movie, it just comes out of nowhere and he's just dead at the end. And we don't even get a setup for it. In the book, Hagrid mentions to him at one point that Aragog is sick. And then once Aragog dies, he asks Harry to come down to the funeral. And that's why Harry goes down there, not just randomly decides. Well, I mean, it is kind of random because of the Felix, but there's also the funeral, and that's why he's going down there. But it's just old age, not anything specific. Yeah,
he's getting up there for a spider, I would think.
Yeah.
So.
All right, movie, nailed it.
Nailed it.
Horace Slughorn transforming into and out of an armchair.
Yes. I think it looked
really
great.
Cool.
Yeah, because I always had a hard time reading the book, and even this time, like, picturing what that was supposed to look like. Like, what is that? And I thought the movie did a really good job of kind of capturing it, and especially when he transforms out of it and, like, almost like a transformer, like, and it, like, deflates and stuff. I thought that was good. I thought it worked really well. And along lines with that, Albus repairing the Muggle home after Horace destroys it all to make it look like there was an attack.
Yeah, that was a cool bit of
visual
magic.
Sequence where everything flies around and puts itself back together. It's pretty neat.
We also get a little bit of a nod to like Horace's older generation bigotry.
Yeah. Where, and this is in the movie and the book.
Yeah.
Where Harry, not Harry, Slughorn says something about how Lily was super talented even though she was Muggle-born.
Yeah.
And Harry's like, what the fuck does that matter? My best friend's Muggle-born, and she's like the most talented witch at our school. And he goes, oh, don't think I'm prejudiced or something.
Yeah.
I think he says something. He's like, oh, don't think I'm prejudiced. It's just, yeah, Lily was my favorite, and she was Muggle-born. It's sort of like that, like, it's that weird older generation bigotry where it's like, it's a problem.
It's a problem, and it's so ingrained that it's not intentionally malicious.
No,
but it's still a
problem. And especially when they're like, please don't think I hate black people. My friend John's black. He's great. Like, it's not okay.
So far from the point.
Yep. The Unbreakable Vow scene, which we talked about a little bit, I thought it was pretty great. Mm-hmm. I think they shot it really well. I think it's performed really well. Alan Rickman is super good in these movies, even though he's playing a less obnoxious Snape. He does a good job.
I thought they did a good job with the Weasleys Wizarding Wheezes shop.
Yeah, when we get to go see it, it's really neat, and everything's all kinds of crazy stuff going on. And even Ginny's Pygmy Puff makes an appearance.
Although the movie doesn't mention that she named it Arnold.
Yeah, I know.
It's like the weirdest name.
For a random little pygmy puff, but it does show up on her shoulder, which I thought was fun. But yeah, it is named Arnold. I'm glad they didn't get rid of Malfoy breaking Harry's nose.
Yes,
which is good because that's a fucking intense scene. I remember reading that for the first time and being like, "Holy shit!" Like that was so vividly striking to me. It's something very different about that, about stomping on a person's face, than there is with like cursing them with a wand. It seems way more visceral and like personal and like
visceral
ruthless.
And personal and rage filled.
Yeah, it's just
in a way that like magic doesn't come across as.
Yeah, and he just breaks his nose and leaves him there. I was like, holy shit! And I'm glad they didn't cut that out because it doesn't feel as intense in the movie as it read to me. Of like, holy shit! Like because you always sort of see them as like bickering like. And it's the other thing is that Harry's completely helpless at this. Like he's paralyzed on the ground, and you stomped on his face. Like it's next level, like awful. But they kept it in. So
I thought they really nailed that first potions class where Harry follows the prince's instructions and has his great success.
Yeah.
Also, that's how Hermione's hair should have looked for the entire series.
During that scene where she's like flustered and like frazzled, her hair is all poofy.
Yeah,
and
her hair just keeps getting bigger.
Yeah, and it looks how it should look.
Yes.
According to the books of how Hermione's hair looks. I think when they go into the pensive, and I don't remember if this is how it looks in the previous movies, but
I don't think it was.
I think this looks pretty cool where they go in and everything like drops in as like almost like oil dripping into water or something like
really
that.
Cool.
It looks really neat, and I thought that was a really cool visualizing of the pensive. We talked about it, but Quidditch is back.
Yeah,
which was cool. We only see one game, and again, we don't get Luna, but it's nice to have at least some Quidditch back in the movie. Which they knew it was going to be the last time we saw Quidditch. So
I did think that they did a pretty good job with. Well, we talked about this.
Yeah, I think they did it better in the movie.
Placebo.
Yeah, I thought they did it better in the movie than
I didn't dislike the way they did it in the book.
I didn't dislike it either. I just thought it. I don't know. I just thought it made more sense in the movie. But yeah, I agree. Did a good job. Katie Bell, when she gets cursed, apart from the clunky setup for that scene, looks exactly how I imagined it.
And very creepy.
Very creepy, where she just flies up into the air with her arms out and her hair is like... It literally, like, if you read the moment from the book, which I'm not going to be able to find it, but if you read the moment from the book, it is exactly what they show in the movie, where her hair is billowing in the wind by like some unseen magic wind, and her mouth is stretched in a silent scream. And she's like with her arms out, and it's like, yep, that's exactly what happens in the movie, and it is creepy. So they nailed that.
Hermione attacking Ron with the birds after he and Lavender initially hook up.
I'm glad they did that. They changed it in the movie. In the book, he actually gets attacked by the birds and gets like cuts on his arms and stuff. Whereas in the movie, she just like flies them at him and they explode or whatever. But I'm glad they at least kept that scene in because it was a fun scene.
Lavender Brown, they nailed it.
Yes.
She cray.
She is super obsessive, and she does a really good job. And apparently she was cast because I think Luna recommended her, the actress who plays Luna, I think, or Hermione, one of the two, was like, you should get her to play Lavender Brown. And she didn't even audition, I think, and didn't initially audition. I read something about it. But she did a great job.
Like that scene where she's drawing in the fog on the train window.
Yeah.
It's so,
it's so creepy. Oh, it's so awful. Yeah. It's really good. And I love it at Slughorn's party when Hermione's running away from Cormac everywhere. They did a good job with that because she constantly is like in the book, like every time Cormac shows up, she's like, "Oh, get the fuck out of here!" And like, I thought they captured that pretty well.
I also really liked the way they did the effects of the love potion.
Yeah, on Ron.
Yeah,
where he's just like super dopey and out of it, and just like, is Lavender or is Romilda behind there? Is she in there? Yeah, that's good. Same, we talked about it, but Harry on Felix, kind of the same idea.
Yeah.
They did a really good job with that. And the performances for those was really spot on from kind of what I imagined in the book. I thought they nailed the cave and the creepy lake. Like visually, the final set piece of the Horcrux cave.
Yeah, really cool.
Really cool. And looks pretty much how I imagined it. Mm-hmm. My only nick against it is Harry pulls the boat up.
Yeah.
Instead of Dumbledore using magic, because of course he would just use magic and put, like, I thought it was weird that he's like, here, Harry, yank this boat out of the box.
Do some manual labor now.
Like in the book, he just taps the chain and it pulls the boat up, which we're wizards.
The whole set piece looked really cool though, and the giant wall of swirling fire we talked about, but that was just so cool looking. Yeah.
Oh, like I said, I love that final set piece. It's great. They did a really good job with it. All right, that was what we had for the movie. Nailed it. We're on the home stretch. Let's round out some Muggle questions and then do some general discussion.
Why is it so important that Dumbledore take Harry, of all people, to go and get the Horcrux? He literally has a team of people that he could call on, but he chooses Harry. Why?
All right, so in the book, Harry specifically asks Dumbledore if he can go along if Dumbledore finds another Horcrux, which the movie doesn't show.
No.
But more importantly, Dumbledore knows that Harry will have to take up the mantle of the Horcrux hunt.
Yes.
So this is training.
Yes. In case it's not clear in the movie, which it may not be, Dumbledore fully knows he's going to die.
Yes.
He fully knows that Malfoy is tasked with killing him, and he has thus made Snape agree to do it in place of Malfoy, which is why when he says Snape, please at the end, he's not begging for his life in case, again, this is all, we find all this out later kind of and put it together, but he's not begging for his life. He's begging Snape to do it.
Yeah.
So that Malfoy doesn't do it.
Dumbledore has a plan.
Yes. So Dumbledore is fully aware that he's about to die or is going to die very shortly. And yes, Harry has to get the rest of the Horcruxes. And that leads us to your next question.
Dumbledore mentioned that Harry's blood was more precious. Why? Does the book go into that?
Harry's the chosen one.
Yeah.
It's Harry who has to kill Voldemort.
Yeah.
As prophesied.
Yeah. And again, Dumbledore knows he's about to die.
Yeah.
Like Dumbledore knows he's like the same thing with why he drinks the potion, with all that stuff. His part of his plan is that he is going to die now.
Yeah. So it doesn't matter if he's weakened by all this stuff.
Yeah, it's all good.
Okay, so Snape is the Half-Blood Prince, but what is the Half-Blood Prince? Why is Snape the Half-Blood Prince? And what is the big deal that Snape is the Half-Blood Prince? Why is that a thing? I don't understand. It's the title of the movie, and I don't understand.
And finally, the final question: what is the Half-Blood Prince? Why does Snape?
Yeah,
call
the
himself
movie
it?
Doesn't explain this at all.
Doesn't explain it. Not even a little bit. So the Half-Blood Prince, we find out, and it's revealed that it is Snape in the movie and the book. And we find that out because Harry tries to use Sectum Separa against him. He's like, "Don't use my spell against me" in the movie. But what the Half-Blood Prince actually is, or why he called himself that, where that title came from.
So Snape's mother was a witch. His father was a Muggle, which makes him a half-blood by wizarding
world
categorizing.
Yeah, how they categorize things.
But her maiden name was Prince.
Yes.
So this is Snape really clinging to the quote-unquote pure part of his bloodline.
Yes. And there's a lot in the book about them trying to figure out what that means that we don't get in the movie.
Yeah, Hermione does a lot of research.
She does a lot of research and looking for people. And she does mention it once in the movie about, like, I looked up and I couldn't find anybody with that title or anything like that. But in the book, she looks up and she finds some people. She actually finds Snape's mom.
Yeah, she finds his mom.
And doesn't realize what it is. She goes, I found Eileen Prince. That she could be the Half-Blood Prince. And ultimately we find out that she was close, just like one person off, like one generation off. It was Snape. But yeah, that's what the Half-Blood Prince is. Movie doesn't explain it at all, really. Again, that's kind of one of those things where they're like, hope you read the books. Or if not, too bad.
As always, thank you guys for answering my Muggle questions. If you are interested in a new podcast, my radio show, the KCMQ Morning Shag, has a best of podcast. We talk pop culture, try to be funny. You can subscribe to it wherever you get your podcast, or you can listen to it now at kcmq.com. Thanks, guys.
That was it for our Muggle questions. Thank you, Trevor. They were lovely, as always. Hope we cleared some things up for you. Let's wrap it up with some general discussion and then our final verdict. So, this is interesting. In the first chapter of this book, the book makes it clear that Sirius is not a British name. Because I, as a dumb American, never knew as a kid if Sirius was just like a British name that I didn't know. But it's not. It's a wizard thing because the human prime minister, which this is weird. Explain this to me. In the book, she writes it as... He says Sirius, and she writes it as S-E-R, like the word Sirius. Uh-huh. Implying that he doesn't know what the name Sirius is. Yeah. But you say them the same.
Right. So when Fudge says Sirius Black to him, instead of connecting it to this name, he connects it to the word Sirius.
Okay. The way it read to me in the book seemed very strange.
And the name Sirius is a mythology reference.
Oh, okay. It's not him saying it. It's him thinking it.
Yeah.
Okay. So it says, Fudge had started ranting about a prison the prime minister had never heard of, a man named quote-unquote Sirius Black. Okay. I thought he had said that line out loud in my memory of this moment, and so I was like, but you would say those the same. But yeah, I see. Yeah. We're viewing his thoughts, and he was thinking the word Sirius. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. But yes, but anyways, my original point stands. Sirius is a wizard name, not a British name. I didn't know.
It's a reference to the constellation, the dog. Yeah. So if anybody out there watches The Good Place,
yes,
we do. Slughorn is Tahani.
He is.
He's just always the name dropping.
He's got to know all the coolest, most amazing people, and he's got to name drop them.
Got to let everybody else know that he knows all the coolest, most amazing people.
If you're not watching The Good Place, you should be.
Yeah, you really should
be. It's amazing. This always bugged me every time I've read this book, and it did again this time. Harry says, he recounts Malfoy breaking his nose on the train. He recounts that to Ron. And then the line after that in the book says, it was a mark of strength in their friendship that Ron didn't laugh.
You know...
And I'm like, at the story of your mortal enemy stomping on your face... You're surprised your best friend didn't find that hilarious?
You know, I will say that Ron is a little bit of a jerk.
Sure. But he stomped on his face and broke his nose, and Harry's like, ooh, you know how I know we're friends? He didn't think Malfoy breaking my nose was the funniest thing in the world.
I don't disagree.
It's such a weird line to me because it never struck me as that.
Because you're not a jerk.
It would have struck me that it's something that Ron would ever laugh at like that. I don't know. It was weird. I thought that line was weird. I don't like it. It's weird. Anyways.
You know what makes a whole lot of sense in the movies that the books never mention? Footrests on the brooms.
It is really true. They are in the movies, and the book never talks about it, and it does make a lot of sense.
It makes a whole lot of sense.
I remember thinking they looked dumb, but it totally makes sense. I remember when I first watched the movies, I was like, why do they got
without the footrest,
your legs just dangle there.
Yeah, your legs would just dangle, and you would have to constantly
keep them up,
keep your muscles contracted to hold your legs up.
The footrest, you're right.
Makes a whole lot of sense.
Totally makes sense. So, love potions or date rape drugs? Discuss.
Yeah. Yeah.
I also thought this was maybe the least woke thing Hermione has ever said. She has this line in the book. She says, love potions aren't dark or dangerous.
Oh, but they are.
It's like, nope, they are. This is literally there. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's problematic,
it's
to say the least.
problematic, and I disagree with the way the story, both the book and the movie, kind of puts this on like, oh, it's girls that use love potions. Girls are always wanting to use love potions.
Right.
Because, sorry, not sorry.
Yeah.
But love potions are date rape drugs, and that's a dude thing.
That's a dude thing. I mean, even just statistically, that's a dude thing. Like, yeah, it is absolutely trying to coerce somebody into being in a relationship with you generally tends to fall on one particular genre of human being. Not usually women.
I like that genre of human being. I'm going to start saying that instead of gender.
There you go. Genre instead of gender.
So we finally get an answer to a question that we've been asking since book 2.
Yes. And we get it more in 7 because they talk about it more in book 7, I recall. Yeah. But we find out in this one that Dumbledore explains that they can tell that when underage wizards use magic, that the Ministry can track that to the area, but not necessarily to who cast it, which was my question from the first one. And the book explicitly answers the point I had about, so like wizards, like underage wizards living in a wizard home could just use magic and they would be fine. And Dumbledore says, and they leave it up to the parents to enforce that. And I'm like, so bullshit. So like all those kids just do magic whenever they want.
Yeah. So basically the answer to how underage magic is policed is that it only is for Muggleborns.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And like the most strict of wizard parents, like, but no, absolutely not. Yeah. You're definitely at a bit of a leg up if you're born in a wizard house because you can practice magic. During your vacation, whereas Muggles cannot.
And there's definitely the implication of like that kind of injustice inherent in the system.
Yeah,
there.
Yeah, definitely.
So, I guess it's an issue that I have with both the book and the movie. That like in the memory when Dumbledore goes to the orphanage, he sets the wardrobe on fire to demonstrate that he can do magic. He's a wizard. And, like, it seems to me like a weird choice to do something really dark and destructive in front of a kid that you already know to have dark and destructive tendencies. Yeah. Like, why would that be the thing you did?
Yeah. Maybe, like, make a dove appear or something. I don't know.
Something nice.
Something nice and sweet. Not like, yeah, you want to see what we can do? Fucking light your shit on fire. Yeah, it's a little strange. It's a little strange. And also, so finally, as my last general note, I want to include a couple things here. First, we'll have a link at some point on social media to a really interesting article, not article, it's a blog post technically, called "In Defense of Horace Slughorn." It's by a comedian that I'm a big fan of. His name's Eli Bosnick. He has a blog where he writes on all kinds of things. He's a big Harry Potter fan. One of the things that he wrote a blog post about was Horace Slughorn. I don't necessarily... It's an interesting read. I'll say that. Yeah. It's a very interesting perspective and take on Horace Slughorn. I would highly recommend listening to it and checking it out. I don't necessarily think it's not like... You shouldn't read it and be like, well, that's right. Horace Slughorn is the most brave person in the Harry Potter series. I'm not saying I don't think he's even arguing that necessarily. Yeah. It's sort of more of like a...
But it's an interesting interpretation and argument.
Yes, about Horace Slughorn. So, in defense of Horace Slughorn, if you Google that combined with Eli Bosnick, but we'll link it.
Yeah, we'll link it.
So check that out. And then finally, we just watched this the other night.
Yeah, so we'll link this as well at some point. A YouTube content creator that we like a lot.
Yes.
Movies with Mikey.
Yes.
Just put out part 1 of a
3-part series.
3-part Harry Potter series.
Yes.
We watched it last night. It's really good.
Yeah.
Lots of great, interesting information and insight.
Yes. And Movies with Mikey, it's on the YouTube channel is Film Joy, and it's a series within that channel. But it's called Movies with Mikey. It's one of our favorite YouTube film essay series out there. He's really, really good. He's also really good at giving you the feels, like...
Yeah.
The way he edits the music and everything is just really, really, really awesome. And it's the first part. He has a really good episode specifically about Prisoner of Azkaban, independently, that came out like a year ago or whatever. But this is a whole series about Harry Potter, and it's really awesome. So go check that out. He already has millions of subscribers, so it's not like we're going to give him a huge bump. But I'm just saying, if
he
you're looking for,
need us to plug him, but
if you're looking for more
anyway.
quality Harry Potter content, go check that out. All right, final verdict.
Now, are you ready for your sentence?
Sentence? But there must be a verdict first.
Sentence first, verdict afterward.
Book's better.
Yeah, are we bothering with this pretense any longer?
We're not. No, we're not. Yeah, it is what it is. But yeah, this is maybe the best adaptation so far. It's up there.
It's a really good one.
It's pretty good. Yeah. It's not a bad adaptation. They did a pretty good job. It's well shot. It mostly makes sense. There's definitely some little details that are...
There's some iffy stuff, but by and large, it is followable.
Yes.
And it looks cool.
And it's fun.
Yeah.
And interesting. So yeah, it's not the worst of the Harry Potter films by any stretch. So ringing endorsement. No, I did enjoy it quite a bit.
Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. It's not the worst one.
Yeah. Fair enough. No, and I really did. I did quite enjoy it. So that's going to do it for Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. This turned out about the length the rest of them have been, which is about how long they're all going to be. So if you can do us a favor and review us on iTunes, Stitcher, anywhere else you download our delightful little podcast. You can also catch us on all of the social media, Facebook, Instagram, Goodreads, Twitter. We have a subreddit. Yeah, that's it. So all those places, and if you're looking for some of the things we talked about earlier with the YouTube or the In Defense of Horus Slughorn, you will find those on our social media, so check them out there. Harry Potter and Deathly Hallows, Part 1 is the next one. So now we have to start reading.
Well, we're going to have a prequel.
Yes, we have a prequel.
Covers the book and both movies.
Yes.
And then we're going to have Part 1 episode and then a Part 2 episode.
Oh, is that how we're doing it?
Yes.
Okay.
That is how we're doing it.
There we go. I have to make sure I tell Trevor to go quicker than he would with the movies. So normally he's been waiting 2 weeks and now he has to go 2 in a row. So anyways,
just this one time.
He'll be fine. He was way ahead of us on 6. He gave us those questions way ahead of time. So he's ahead of the game. Anyways, until that time comes next week, guys, gals, non-binary, everybody else, keep reading books, keep watching movies, and keep being awesome.
Every single genre of human.
Every genre of human. All of you.
Keep doing the thing.
Keep doing it.